Now that you can forge weapons, why don't we visit this magic forge of yours and forge something for me? Asked Gaia while swinging around the dark sword. Do you have something in mind? Michael asked Gaia. Yesterday when Gaia told him everything that happened, she seemed particularly intrigued by the Death Kiss crossbows which reminded Michael of handguns. With his inventor and blacksmith traits, he planned to fuse energy and his knowledge of modern weapons to create new kinds of weapons. Equipping Big Bertha with torpedoes was the first step in that plan. Maybe, Gaia nodded. Michael finished his list and put it inside his coat pocket. Then he stood up from the chair. Let me guess, you want something like the Death Kiss crossbows? Looking at the glowing smile on her face, Michael could tell he had guessed it right. She then came to him with the dark sword on her shoulder. Can you make me one? I can make one better, Michael casually shrugged. Given the right materials, Michael would forge better weapons. Unfortunately, most of the weapons in his mind required special runes that could only be bought from the system. So he had to postpone forging new weapons until he could settle the debt. Besides, a portal was required to reach his forge, and he was nowhere close to building one. He wasn't an expert in portals, but he knew it would cost him millions which he didn't have. They were in dire need of gold coins. Hopefully, Michael could get his new revenue stream up and running. Otherwise, they would be in big trouble because although the Dark Army was loyal to him, loyalty wouldn't fill their bellies and keep their needs in check. But you have to wait for some time. First, we need to fix the financial side of things. Gaia rolled her eyes, giving him an it's about time look. Connect me with the twins. I want them to get me some things, said Michael. He then took the dark sword from her hand and unsheathed it. Following Michael, Gaia contacted Azazel and conveyed Michael's order. The corridors and the walls looked much better than when he left the castle a few weeks ago. He had yet to see the building process and hoped to get more coins before the dwarves stopped the construction works. Not because they needed gold coins as their wage but because they needed materials and materials that didn't come for free. Even the Dark Lord had to buy things using gold coins. There were several rooms on the way to the meeting hall, which were blocked by crates and stones. The dwarves were yet to finish building those rooms, according to Gaia's exact prerequisites. She oversaw everything and gave the dwarves the challenge of their life. Although the Dark Army kidnapped these dwarves had grown to love the challenge of building the Dark Castle. It was nothing like they had ever built. Every single dwarf was handpicked by Gaia as she settled down for nothing but the best. On top of the talented dwarves, Eladir worked with a group of rune masters to engrave defensive and offensive runes throughout the castle. The past Dark Lord's castle and the arrays alone killed thousands of guardians and enemies who dared to step onto the Dark Ocean. At its peak, the castle was nothing but a death trap feared by everyone in the world. If the past Dark Lord was alive, he would be proud of his current self because the castle Michael was building was shaping up to be more powerful than its earlier version. The meeting hall was dimly lit with torches instead of chandeliers. The flickering light illuminated by the torches added an eeriness to the hall. When Michael and Gaia reached the meeting hall, they saw Azazel was waiting for them. My lord, Azazel bowed deeply. His gaze immediately fell on the dark swords as he could feel the threatening aura radiating from the swords. Azazel then proceeded to pull out Michael's and Gaia's thrones for them to sit on. After they settled into their respective thrones, Azazel waved his hand as the stone table slowly split opened in the middle. A mirror rose from the hole and flickered for a moment before showing the faces of Titus and Optimus. The twins looked different with their cropped haircuts and brightened faces. Keeping them off the battleground was the best decision Gaia made for them. She had her doubts when she made them the procurer of rare goods and everything for the Dark Army for the best price possible. However, the twins surprised Gaia by making contact throughout Elon and Azair and dealing with the merchants themselves. It wouldn't be an understatement to say the Dark Castle solely depended on the twins for the construction materials. My lord, my lady, the twins bowed as their eyes glistened with gratefulness and respect. I'd love to have a chit-chat with you guys, but I am kinda in a rush. So let me cut to the chase. I need everything on this list as soon as possible. Michael took out a parchment and raised it so the twins could take a good look at the things he had written on the yellow parchment. Titus quickly scribbled everything down on a piece of paper. Thanks to their experience, Titus and Optimus were able to give Michael a rough estimate of how much everything on the list would cost him. My lord, if we are to get everything you want, it's gonna cost at least 50 million. Gaia's brows arched up as she snatched the parchment from Michael's hand and read everything from top to bottom. What in the hell would cost 50 million? She muttered. But when she saw the epic class cauldron, the largest size, Titus' words made sense to her. Why stop for epic? Just write down you need legendary class, Gaia said sarcastically. Titus and Optimus scratched their heads, looking at the Dark Queen bicker with the Dark Lord himself. She was the only person in the entire army who had the guts to yell at him. Believe it or not, this was one of the many reasons the subordinates trusted the Dark Lord more than the Great Eight clans, because an evil person, as they claimed, would never sit there and listen to a woman yell at him. On the contrary, they knew only one with a kind heart and humanity intact would respect and listen to his female counterpart. Whatever. Just get him what he needs. I assume you two need some time to locate everything on the list, Gaia asked as the twins nodded. Give us 5 days, my lord, asked Optimus. We need time to get the coins for the items. Gaia leaned closer to Michael and whispered into his ears. Michael nodded. Getting the coins they needed was Gaia's specialty, and she had done a better job than he ever could have. Hence, Michael trusted Gaia to deal with it as she always did. She already started to rub her chin, formulating a plan inside her head. If the twins were right, they needed 50 million in 5 days. Then I expect you to report to me in 5 days, said Michael. Chapter 850 Opportunity arises. Michael was about to leave the meeting hall after talking to the twins when Azazel received a call from Sadie. My lord, Lady Sadie has learned something important, Azazel said. Put her through then. Michael motioned him to connect Sadie to the mirror before them. Azazel nodded and flicked his wrist as the mirror flickered for a moment before showing Sadie's face. Sadie was pleasantly surprised to see Michael without his mask or the usual black armor. His current attire reminded Sadie of the time she first met him. At that time she was far stronger than him. Everything felt like a dream to Sadie. In such a short time, the cocky guy she met at the Heavenly Gate competition went from Foundation Stage Warrior to the Dark Lord who was at the Immortal Stage. Looking at Michael's charming face, her cherry-red lips curled upwards, radiating a bright smile. My lord, Sadie grabbed her long sky-blue skirt and curtsied Michael. How are you, Sadie? Michael asked with a gentle smile. I am perfectly fine, my lord. Thank you for asking. Michael nodded. Sorry to break the reunion, but tell us, what have you learned? Gaia interjected. It was not like Gaia was jealous or something, but she didn't like wasting time when they had to earn 50 million in 5 days. Time was of the essence. Princess Chanel Forbes was cursed by an elven mage, my lord. Sadie took a deep breath and said. Her words stunned Michael for a moment. The name Forbes rang a bell inside his head. If he was right, the king of Kethin, Noah's homeland, was called Porter Forbes. Princess of Kethin? Gaia asked as Sadie nodded. When Gaia was the princess of Nagaland, she met Chanel at a gala and exchanged a few words. Of course, Gaia paid little to no attention to Chanel or any other nobles. She hated those galas and always found an excuse to escape midway. Go on, tell us everything you know, Gaia gestured at Sadie to continue. The gears inside her head slowly started to turn, formulating a plan to get the 50 million gold coins and maybe more. This felt like a God-sent opportunity to Gaia. She knew about Michael's curse-breaking skill. Thus, if Chanel was indeed cursed, she had a way to break the curse and save the day for King Porter. King Porter's close friend is a regular customer of one of the dance houses in Rosegate. I have some of my girls working there since it's where the nobles tend to let their tongues loose. A few hours ago, this man had a little too much ale and spurted out that the elves had cursed the princess. Recently, Princess Chanel cancelled all her visits and completely went dark. I heard rumors from the maids that they were ordered not to disturb the princess no matter what. Sade paused for a moment and continued. I had my doubts for a while because I felt something was amiss. Especially after Hendrix Gardner paid the king an unofficial visit. So I ordered my girls to work on the ministers. Hendrix Gardner? Michael muttered to himself. The last time Michael met this 6-star alchemist in the alchemy competition, the vampires almost killed him. He would have died if Michael wasn't there. At that time, Michael only wanted Gabriel to die. Michael wondered what the old man thought when he realized the young man sat beside him and judged the competition was the Dark Lord himself. Apparently, the princess has only 3 more days to live. What about Noah and the Guardians? If the princess only had 3 more days to live, King Porter would have approached Noah and asked for his help, right? After all, Noah is still a citizen of Kethin, said Gaia. Plus, she is a princess. I wouldn't be surprised if she were in love with Noah, Michael chuckled. The last time I heard from our guy in the guild, Noah and his team were planning to venture into the treacherous ocean to find a way to break the curse. Then we have to beat them to the princess and save her instead. Gaia leaned back on her throne. Considering Noah took the weapon and the prototype out of her hands, it was only fair that she return the favor to him by curing the princess before he could. For a price, Gaia snickered. Unlike Noah, Michael didn't need to go to the treacherous ocean to break the curse. Michael could break the curse in a few minutes if he wished, thanks to his curse breaker skill. On the other hand, Michael laughed inside, thinking Noah would come out of the treacherous ocean empty-handed because he had taken the curse-breaking artifact long ago. So unless there was another similar artifact in the treacherous ocean that even the system didn't know of, Noah would stumble upon nothing but sticks and stones. Did you learn anything about why the elves cursed the princess? How she ended up getting cursed by the elves? Gaia frowned in doubt. The continent Elon had the lowest number of elves in the entire world. Many people in Elon would die without seeing an elf in their entire lives because the elves tended to live in Ar and avoided Elon because they thought Elon continent was a backwater place and beneath their standards. Besides, the elves wouldn't go around cursing people without a valid reason. If they chose to curse her instead of killing her, Gaia knew there must be a reason behind it. According to the man, it's the usual cliché, my lady. Long story short, Princess Chanel met an elf when she was visiting Kingdom Thera and fell in love. She wanted to marry him against King Porter's wishes. She tried to run away with the elf, except the king caught them both and ordered his men to beat the crap out of the elf. The next day, the elf's uncle personally paid King Porter a visit and gifted Chanel an evil curse as a reminder of the king's mistake of raising his hand against his kind. Michael chuckled as it reminded him of Claire's story. She laughed at Chanel inside for thinking she could be with the elf and live happily ever after. If anything, Chanel was lucky the elves didn't curse all her family. But when Michael thought about it, the elf chose Chanel over her family because he wanted her family to suffer more. Imagine seeing your only daughter dying slowly and painfully while you stand there and do nothing. The elf wanted King Porter to feel helpless and blame himself for the rest of his life. That does sound like what an elf would do, said Michael. It seems all the princesses are rebels. Michael turned his gaze toward Gaia and winked. Instead of giving Michael a snarky comment, Gaia just rolled her eyes. Then Gaia turned her gaze back to Sadie. This is indeed good news. You've been doing a marvelous job so far, Sadie. Gaia couldn't help praising Sadie. Everyone, including Michael, knew how hard it was to impress the Princess of Nagaland, but Sadie managed to do just that. In a short amount of time, Sadie turned a guardian into their spy, inserted her girls in almost every part of the world, created a web of spy networks, assisted other subordinates with their tasks, and slowly solidated her place as the next sect leader of the Silver Moon. It was no simple task, especially when she had to work under Noah's growing influence. It's my pleasure to serve you, my lady. Sadie bowed her head and opened her mouth for a moment before closing it. She looked as though she wanted to say something but didn't know how to. Both Michael and Gaia noticed Sadie's change in behavior. Is there something else you want to share, Sadie? Michael asked her. Sadie looked at Michael and Sadie for a few moments before taking a deep breath. Yesterday, I had a meeting with a guardian. She attended the tea party arranged by Alvaro's aunt, one of the elders in Silver Moon. The question she asked me and the way she looked at me just left me with a bad feeling, said Sadie with a worried tone. Alvaro is our inside man, right? Michael asked Sadie to see her nodding. Lord Saber warned us about her visit, so I was prepared. Still, Sadie's words trailed off. Should I put a hit on her through Arya? Gaia asked, but Michael shook his head before Sadie could give her answer to Gaia. For now, act like nothing happened, Michael said to Sadie, turning his head to look at Azazel. Tell Trista to send one of her minions to shadow the guardian who met Sadie. My lord, Sadie interrupted Michael as he turned his gaze back to Sadie. She is going to the treacherous ocean with Noah, Sadie muttered. Michael rubbed his stubble beard for a moment until he found a way to deal with this annoyance. It was obvious to Michael that this girl was trying to impress Noah, but Michael didn't know how much the girl knew about Sadie and why she took an interest in her. Since Sadie was far too valuable to risk, Michael had to find a way to keep Sadie out of the Guardian Guild's crosshair. As long as Noah was with her, Michael knew he wouldn't be able to take her out. Besides, if he did, Noah would automatically realize Sadie had something to do with the Dark Lord. Therefore, Michael's only viable option was to follow this girl until he knew more about everything. Then when she comes out, tell Trista to shadow the girl. I want to know everything about her. If push comes to shove, I will deal with her personally. Michael's voice turned grave. After becoming the Dark Lord, Michael was rarely involved in problems like this. Instead, he had subordinates to solve them for him. But this felt like something he had to deal with it personally. After hearing Michael's words, Sadie heaved a sigh of relief. With the Dark Lord's reassurance, Sadie could rest easy. The last thing Sadie wanted was a guardian to snoop around. After all, she was just a few months away from getting crowned as the next sect leader. Chapter 851 Breaking the Curse for a Price. Princess Chanel's room was nothing like a typical princess room. Contrary to bright colors, Chanel used dark colors to decorate her room. The walls looked gloomy with dark brown paint and a lack of light through the royal red curtains covering the windows. Chanel decorated the room with numerous things she had collected through visits to other kingdoms. Her room was a chaotic mess, but it had a certain rhythm. On the corner, she put a sofa set facing the fireplace. Several book racks filled with texts, scrolls, and artifacts were a few meters away from the fireplace. Next to these book racks, she had a wide closet containing all her dresses, and at last, her bed was located between a study table and a 6-feet-tall bonsai tree. The tree had grown out of shape and looked as though no one had pruned it for weeks. The lack of light made leaves look a little paler than their usual jade green. In the dark room, a couple of people gathered around the bed where Princess Chanel was groaning in pain. The princess was a charming beauty with striking blonde hair inherited from her mother and hazel eyes from her father. Her smooth, silky skin lost its glow due to the curse, and the princess herself looked thin and weak. Even her collarbones and cheekbones became visible to others because she hadn't eaten for weeks. The curse affected her very soul, and as a result, her body couldn't sustain itself using arch energy. Princess Chanel squirmed and kicked her legs in excruciating pain. She closed her eyes and clenched the royal red bedsheets under her as tight as she could. Princess Chanel's mother, Queen Clarice, gently brushed the hair flowing onto Chanel's face and sobbed. Tears rolled out of the queen's red eyes sitting atop dark circles. The queen held Chanel's hands and sat beside her while the others looked at the princess in pain helplessly. "Your Majesty," an old man wearing golden robes embroidered with silver threads raised his voice, cutting through the silence in the room. King Porter Forbes was not in his kingly robes but wore a plain shirt and brown trousers. He looked more like a commoner than a king with his messy dark hair and untrimmed beard with patches of white hair. Porter Forbes sat at the end of Chanel's bed with his hands folded. His hazel eyes glimmered with helplessness and grief. He was desperate for help. Even the 6-star alchemist Hendrix Gardner couldn't do anything to lift the curse. All he could do was ease Chanel's pain and make her life easier until her body and soul gave up. The sight of his daughter groaning in pain was eating him from within. "It's time we break this news to the citizens," said the old man, one of the most loyal people who worked for Porter Forbes. Everyone in the room shared the same pain as King Porter and Queen Clarice because they saw Chanel grow up to be a young lady from a baby. They loved the princess like she was their own. Unlike the royal courts, everyone loved Porter Forbes. He was a kind and benevolent king. The old man's voice stuttered as he couldn't say what he really wanted to. Everyone who checked Chanel had told them one thing: the curse cannot be lifted. Some even said the king and queen should make peace and say goodbye to Chanel. King Porter's last resort was the guardians, but even though Noah was a god, he lacked the powers to perform the miracle of lifting the curse. "How can I?" the king muttered. "Arg." Suddenly, Chanel began to scream and frantically wriggled on the bed. Queen Clarice quickly wrapped her slender arm around Chanel's waist and stopped her daughter from rolling out of bed. Meanwhile, Porter grabbed Chanel's legs and tried to lessen her squirming. Princess Chanel's scream echoed through the room, making everyone shudder. The way she screamed and shouted really made them want to leave the room as soon as possible. They weren't strong enough to stay there and see the princess in agony. Princess Chanel continued to suffer for almost an hour. By the time she stopped screaming, her body had no strength left to move. Except for the muffled groans, no words or sounds came out of Chanel's mouth. Porter's heart told him to have hope and expect Noah to return with a cure, while his mind told him to accept the inevitable. He was unfortunate enough to know how powerful elven curses are. One of the elven runemasters who examined Chanel's soul told him that no one could lift the curse, including the one who put the curse in the first place. The curse was unliftable and shouldn't have been used on a human, according to the elf. So nothing would happen even if the Empress herself ordered the elf who put the curse to lift it. Porter's eyes became watery as he slowly turned around to address everyone in the room. "Please leave us alone for a moment," Porter's voice broke off. "Take all the time you need, Your Majesty. We will take care of everything else," said the old man before leaving the room with the others. After everyone left the room, Porter finally let go of the tears in his eyes. His legs refused to take a step forward. He moved like a snail, reached his wife's side and collapsed on the bed. Chanel was their only daughter, and the memories they had with Chanel flashed before their eyes. "Is this the end, Porter?" Queen Clarice broke into tears. Words barely escaped her mouth. Porter couldn't even give Clarice a few comforting words because he knew there was no way of helping Chanel. If there was a chance of remotely lifting the curse, Noah would have given them hope. Even he told Porter to strengthen his heart and mind and prepare for anything. Why do the gods want this for us? What did we do wrong? If there was a god, he wouldn't have let this happen to our daughter, Porter said, gritting his teeth. The helplessness he felt turned into anger, and when Clarice talked about the gods, Porter snapped. But little did they know that when they needed a god, the one who arrived to help was the devil. The curtains slowly swayed to the wind as Porter and Clarice felt a cold breeze. Everyone around them darkened as the dim light orbs flickered. At first they thought the wind caused the orbs to flicker. But then, everything grew darker to the point Porter and Clarice couldn't see what was before them. The room turned pitch black. A few seconds later the orbs flickered back to life, giving them just enough light to illuminate a third figure in the room. Porter's pupils shrunk as he saw someone sitting on the other side of Chanel's bed. Porter's warrior instincts kicked in as he quickly rose from the bed. He instinctively reached for the sword and grabbed the side of his waist where he used to have his sword. Queen Clarice's motherly instinct made her pull Chanel close to her. A calm voice resonated through the room when Porter was about to shout out for the guards. "You wouldn't make a sound if you want your daughter to live." The words made Porter's heart skip a beat and prevented him from making a sound. As much as Porter wanted the guards to come running into the room, he wanted to know if there was some truth to the intruder's words. "Show yourself," Porter ordered the intruder. A candle slowly flew past him and hovered beside the intruder. Then the intruder lit the candle with a snap of his fingers. To Porter's shock, the candlelight illuminated the face that terrified everyone, the Dark Lord. Porter's heart almost stopped when he saw the Dark Lord's eyes that glowed like bloodstones. Dark Lord? Queen Clarice trembled from head to toe. Her fear of the Dark Lord paralyzed Clarice's body. As Porter was searching for words, the Dark Lord rested his head on his fist and sat on the throne with his leg atop the other. The king and queen had no idea how he managed to enter the castle without raising any alarms. If he wanted them dead, there was nothing to stop them. However, his glowing eyes didn't contain any killing intent within. "Where there is pain, let there be darkness." Porter and Clarice heard the Dark Lord's bone-chilling voice. Their minds were in too much shock to process his words. "I am the only god who listened to your pain and came here to help. Tell me, Porter, will you save your daughter or deny my help and let your daughter die in pain?" The Dark Lord's words sounded slow and deep. Each word struck them like an arrow. If this was any other situation, Porter would have called out the guards and fought the Dark Lord himself despite the obvious results. Still, Porter was a God-fearing man who would rather die fighting evil than serve one to live. However, he couldn't bring himself to refuse the Dark Lord's help when his daughter's life depended on his words. "You have 5 seconds to decide. Your daughter's life is in your hands now," said the Dark Lord. He didn't give them much time to think about anything except Chanel's life. This was the small light of hope they had in days. Everything and everyone failed them, and in 3 days their daughter would die in pain. Any parent at this time would give anyone anything to save their child, and Porter and Clarice were no different. 1. The Dark Lord raised a finger. 2. He raised another finger and continued to count. "Save her," Porter answered him when the Dark Lord reached count 4. 200 million and your teleportation portal. That would be the price for your daughter's life. Porter wasn't surprised because he expected to pay the price when the man before him was the Dark Lord. However, Porter and Clarice felt glad that the price for saving their daughter was gold coins and the portal instead of their souls or anything that would forever bind them to the Dark Lord. "You can take whatever you want as long as you lift this curse from my daughter." Porter rushed the Dark Lord when Chanel's groans got louder. They shuddered when the Dark Lord rose from his throne and stepped toward their daughter. Part of them wanted to keep Chanel away from the Dark Lord's reach, but they stood still like statues, looking at the Dark Lord placing his hand on Chanel's head. As soon as the Dark Lord touched Chanel, her body trembled. A glow appeared in Chanel's chest as Porter and Clarice watched the glow getting brighter and brighter until they heard something snap. After they heard a sound like a twig break, the Dark Lord took his hand away from Chanel and stepped back. "Father," Porter heard the word he thought he would never hear again. Under his watery gaze, Chanel slowly opened her eyes. Chapter 852 Portal to the Forge. King Porter Forbes and Queen Clarice spent the entire day with Chanel, who was miraculously cured by someone. The ministers were speechless to see Chanel walking out of her room fully healed. The king and queen went with the story that the curse suddenly disappeared from Chanel's soul. As much as the monsters and the nobles doubted Porter's words, they had no other explanation. The possibility of the Dark Lord entering the castle and lifting the curse had never come across their minds. That day, King Porter ordered the servants to prepare a lavish feast, celebrating Chanel's recovery. The evening sun cast long shadows upon Kingdom Kethern. As the slanting rays of the setting sun gave a warm orange tinge to the horizon, the darkness slowly shrouded the rest of the world. Soon, Rosegate was aglow with bright city lights, and the castle stood atop the Jill like a fully decorated Christmas tree. When everyone in the castle returned to their rooms to cultivate and sleep, King Porter and Queen Clarice sat on the edge of their beds, holding each other's hands. They looked exhausted and nervous. Their eyes frantically moved around the room as though they were searching for someone. "Where is he?" Queen Clarice muttered. "He said he would meet us here at midnight," King Porter said. Since Chanel was cured, his eyes looked lively and filled with life. Unlike when he was in Chanel's room, Porter looked like a proper king now, with his hair neatly combed and embroidered royal red robes. Despite the concerns in their hearts, they remained silent, waiting for the Dark Lord. Silence swept across the room, and a wolf's howl in the distance kept them company. Eventually, the light orbs in the room started to flicker just like the orbs in Chanel's room when the Dark Lord arrived. Suddenly, the light radiating from the orbs got snuffed out as darkness completely took over the room. Their hearts shuddered and prepared to meet the Dark Lord. In a blink of an eye, the orbs lit up again. Although King Porter and Queen Clarice expected the Dark Lord to arrive, they still felt a bolt of shock running down their spines when they saw him sitting on a throne made of skulls and bones before them. Their bodies jolted up from the bed as if the bed was on fire. "How is the princess?" Michael asked King Porter and Queen Clarice. They were surprised to hear the humanity in his voice, unlike before. "She is doing good," King Porter answered. "Under any other circumstances, I would have lifted the curse for no payment. But even I have some obligations. As a ruler, I think you would understand," said Michael. They lived long enough to apprehend whether someone was speaking from their heart or just tallying through the teeth. Hence, his words actually surprised both the Queen and King because they sounded genuine. "Please take this." King Porter slowly removed the space ring from his finger and extended it toward the Dark Lord. The ring ascended into the air, floating toward him. Michael quickly took a look inside the space ring and saw stacks of gold coins. The system scanned the space ring and confirmed the amount inside, 200 million. "I ordered my men to leave the portal room as you said," said King Porter. After seeing Chanel laugh once again when he thought they had lost her, King Porter didn't regret making a deal with the Dark Lord at all. Deep down, they felt grateful to the Dark Lord because if it wasn't for him, Chanel would never have been cured. It was he who answered their prayers. So no matter what the world said about him, to them he was a man who saved their daughter. Besides, he just asked for 200 million and a portal which was practically nothing to a king. The only problem was King Porter had to deal with the generals and the ministers about the sudden disappearance of the portal. He just hoped the Guardians or Noah wouldn't become suspicious of his dealing with the Dark Lord. Aladir and his minions were dismantling the portal and teleporting the parts as they were speaking. Instead of building a new portal that would cost 300 million, Aladir suggested Michael get an existing one. Then he could modify the portal to connect the castle to the forge using the copper ring left behind by the past Dark Lord. Luckily for Michael, King Porter had recently built a teleportation portal with the help of Ice Fair Duke. "Just remember one thing, King Porter, every coin has two sides. Do not believe everything you hear," said the Dark Lord, rising from his throne. He strolled to the wind with his hands stuffed in his pants pockets. "What should we do if the elf wants to harm Chanel again?" asked Queen Clarice. Since the Dark Lord was kind enough to lift the curse, she hoped he would discreetly do something about the elves. But what she really wanted was for the elf who cursed Chanel to die because as long as the elf was alive, Chanel's life would always be in danger. As a mother and a queen, she had to protect Chanel, even if that meant striking another deal with the Dark Lord. "You should ask this to Noah. He will deal with the elves. As much as I'd like to rip apart the elf who cursed the princess, it's better for Noah to deal with them instead of me, because the less I involve in your lives the better," said Michael. Dealing with the elves was not a big matter to Michael. In fact, he had multiple ways of dealing with them. Option number 1, he could put a hit on the elf with Arya. Option number 2, he could ask the Empress herself to keep the elves in check. But instead of choosing the first two options, Michael went with option number 3, let Noah deal with the elves, which would undoubtedly lead to Noah pissing off the elves. As a result, Noah would become an enemy of the elves, and the more enemies he had, the better for Michael. Down the road, Michael could even team up with the elves in the battle against Noah. "They say I am evil, but I never tortured a girl before her parents' eyes and intended them to see their daughter slowly die," Michael shrugged. "Anyways, if I were you, I'd keep Chanel out of R and seek the Guardian Guild's help. Elves are vengeful creatures. You should be more careful dealing with them in the future. With a flick of his wrist, Michael took out a card with the skull embossed in the center. He put the card on the table beside him and turned his gaze back to King Porter and Queen Clarice. Keep this hidden if you want to contact me again. But if you don't feel like it, throw it away, said Michael. Michael was about to use the runic teleportation to leave the castle when King Porter stepped forward. Dark Lord, Porter called out to Michael. Thank you. When Michael turned around, King Porter lowered his head. We are grateful for what you did for our daughter, Queen Clarice slowly said. You're good people. You don't deserve such punishment. As he said, Michael willed the system to teleport him back to the Dark Castle, leaving Queen Clarice and King Porter behind. After he left, the throne vanished into thin air as King Porter and Queen Clarice exhaled heavily. Back in the castle, Ellider was running back and forth inside an empty hall that was still reeked of fresh wood and marble. Grand chandeliers lit the room brightly and illuminated the giant circular portal in the center of the room. The portal's outer structure was made of pure silver, and the dwarves built the steps with marble. At that moment, Ellider was busy carving runes on the silver ring while the copper ring Michael gave him was lying on the floor. You are back. Ellider noticed Michael entering the room and stopped what he was doing. Seeing the proud elf bow toward him despite his busy work was surprising to Michael. When Michael approached the portal, he noticed the runes dimly glowing and pulsating energy. So everything went well? Asked Michael. The portal hall was empty as you told us. I assume King of Kethern won't become a problem for us in the future? Asked Ellider as Michael motioned him to continue his work. I don't think so. You know, the Queen asked me if I could help them with the elf situation. Michael talked to Ellider while the elf was carving runes on the portal. What did you tell her? They all hate and loathe you until they need your help, huh? Ellider snickered. I said let Noah deal with the elves. It's his job as the supreme guardian to keep his people safe. Besides, I have a feeling Noah would piss off the elves and make an enemy out of them like he always does. Michael chuckled. As long as Andreas is with him, we cannot predict Noah's behavior. The Andreas I know is a rebel and a man with an iron will. If he sets his mind to do something, he will do it no matter what. Suppose he wasn't there 3,000 years ago, we could have destroyed the great 8 clans in a few weeks. That bastard ruined everything, Ellider snarled. I wasn't there 3,000 years ago, was I? I would like to see him try that again. Michael cracked his fingers. After we finish the portal, we should go to the forge and complete our new weapon for Big Bertha, said Michael. I looked into the design and came up with the necessary runes. But those runes require a huge amount of energy. At one point, you have to come up with an alternative for arch-energy crystals. One problem at a time, Ellider. We still haven't mined a quarter of the crystals in the mountain, said Michael. As far as Michael was concerned, Mugashuka's energy radiation would continue to form crystals in the Stormville Mountain, and that Hydra wasn't going anywhere soon. So Michael didn't need to worry about the arch-energy crystals running out. Chapter 853 Forging the Torpedoes. Ellider and Michael spent an entire day working together to finish the portal. They lost track of time and ignored everything that happened outside the hall. Gaia often entered the hall to bring Michael and Ellider something to eat and drink. Other than that, Michael received no visitors. Rather, Gaia took care of everything. Now, if you put a crystal in there, Ellider pointed at a tubular-shaped golden pipe next to the portal. The metal tube ran into the ground and connected at the portal's bottom under the steps. It was Michael's task to build an intricate mechanism that turned arch-energy crystals into pure energy that could be used to activate the portal. No one needed the mechanism outside the southern continent since the atmosphere itself contained pure arch-energy, and the runes could harness this energy. Considering the southern continent's atmosphere had no arch-energy, Michael had to build such a device. In other words, without Michael, no one could build a portal inside the void line, no matter how many rune masters tried. Michael retrieved a big chunk of crystal, dropped it into the pipe and waited for the portal to absorb the energy. The metal pipe vibrated, letting out a purr. White smoke slowly escaped the metal pipe as Michael sensed an intense heat radiating from the pipe. It's working, Ellider said when he noticed the runes began to glow on the metal ring around the open space where the vortex was supposed to appear. These intricate symbols began to glow brighter and brighter until Michael felt the space around him distort. It was like an invisible magnet pulling him closer. With a suppressed boom, a crimson-red vortex appeared within the ring in a blink of an eye. Let's bring some creature and send it through the portal first, Ellider said. But he was too late to realize Michael had already dashed into the portal. When Michael entered the vortex, everything went dark for a split second, and then the scenery around him changed. He appeared right at the entrance to his forge. The forge looked the same as when he had left it a few days before. Before he stepped into the forge, he turned around to see if the vortex was still there. Surprisingly, there was no swirling vortex behind him. Instead, all he could see was a glowing rune on the wall. Michael instinctively placed his hand on the rune that resembled a swirl. The moment he touched the rune, the wall trembled. Then the wall slowly split open, forming an archway. Inside the archway, Michael saw the crimson-red vortex. Michael strolled toward the portal and entered it once again to reach Eladir. That was dangerous, Eladir snarled when Michael stepped out of the portal. We are the best at what we do. So I didn't have to worry, Michael shrugged. Besides, the system would have warned him if the portal led to somewhere else than the forge. Follow me. The forge awaits, said Michael. Eladir followed Michael into the portal and stepped into the demon's grave for the first time in his life. The forge welcomed Eladir with its scorching heat. Eladir didn't even spend a few seconds in the forge as he began to sweat bullets. As soon as Michael entered the forge, he removed his long coat and the full-sleeve shirt he wore beneath. Why is it so hot here? The heat he felt was nothing like he had ever felt. It was like someone put him inside a boiling cauldron. On top of that, the furnace wasn't even burning. Michael chuckled, seeing Eladir getting drenched in his own sweat. We are inside a volcanic mountain. Take a look at this. Michael walked to the furnace and pulled the lever as the golden lava oozed into the furnace through the pipes hanging above. What do you mean a volcano? Asked Eladir. Come with me. Michael walked out of the forge and headed outside to show Eladir where they were. Eladir followed him through a dark, narrow corridor until they reached a dead end. What he thought was a dead end turned out to be a door when the Dark Lord placed his hand on the wall. The moment Michael opened the door, an intense scorching heat wave brushed past Eladir, almost burning his hair. Careful, said Michael, shielding Eladir from tripping down the narrow path and falling down right into the bubbling lava. Now Eladir realized what he meant by inside a volcanic mountain. As I said before, I cannot fly in the demon's grave. So to get up there we need to climb, Michael pointed at the top of the mountain. But if you do not want, we can return to the forge. Michael knew although Eladir was inside the body of a half-elf, he still behaved like a dark elf who was extremely sensitive to dry or hot weather. The last thing Michael wanted was to hear Eladir bitch about climbing the mountain. However, Eladir surprised Michael with his answer. I am not a delicate young flower. Of course I want to climb. Follow my lead if you can, Dark Lord. Eladir snickered and started to climb the wall like he was an expert mountain climber. I didn't expect that. Michael's brows arched up, looking at the elf crawling up the wall without slowing down. He was not going to lose to an elf in mountain climbing, so Michael started to climb as fast as he could. Eladir was surprisingly fast, but Michael was faster than him. With a few leaps and jumpers, Michael reached the top and extended his arm to help Eladir reach the top. Where did you learn to climb like this? Michael asked Eladir as the elf grabbed Michael's hand and reached the top. When Eladir was about to answer Michael, he saw the vast open world of Demon's Grave. The sight of red skies, thunderstorms and smoky air stunned Eladir to the core. On top of that, Eladir saw the Colossus bull in the distance and his jaw dropped. What in the hell is that? Eladir asked, looking at the bull. Something we don't want to mess with, said Michael. Eladir's gaze swept across the vast land. The demon's grave looked more terrifying than he had previously imagined. He felt lucky Sky Hall prisoned him in the Ukulun realm. At least he had a beautiful place for sightseeing. Almost half an hour later, Michael and Eladir returned to the forge and started working on their next project, the torpedoes. Eladir stepped outside the forge and into the dark castle to get everything they needed from the storeroom. Then, Eladir returned to the forge to see Michael starting the furnace. When he thought the temperature couldn't go any higher, the furnace surprised Eladir with its scorching heat lava. Michael put the metal ores into a large cauldron and hung it above the lava. Because they weren't dark metal ores bought from the system, the hot lava provided more than enough heat to melt them into hot gooey goodness. While Michael was working near the furnace, Eladir studied the invisible runes around the forge. To others, the runes were invisible, but to him, they glowed as bright as stars in the midnight sky. The more runes he saw, the more he realized the similarity with his own work. To be more precise, they were his work. The runes were almost everywhere, the tables, walls, ceiling and pipes. Everywhere he turned, he saw runes. This whole forge was a beautiful mix of runes and intricate contraptions, just like the portal. The forge was a symbol of friendship between the Dark Lord and Eladir, the elf who stood by the Dark Lord's side till the last day when he reset the entire universe. As Eladir was studying the runes, Michael grabbed a 5-meter-long and 3-meter-wide metal pillar, created a mold in the shape of a cigar using the dark beams, and poured the melted metal into the mold. Michael let the metal cool down and take the desired shape. While the metal was cooling down, Michael returned to the work table and started to build the targeting system in which he needed Eladir's help. Enough gawking around. We have work to do, said Michael. Finally, Eladir snapped back to reality and turned around. This whole place has my runes, not yours, Parisi. They belong to the past you, said Michael. I wonder what else they left behind. Judging by the complexity of each rune, I must have learned quite too much. No shit. We designed an array to reset the entire universe. So yeah, you did learn too much. Michael rolled his eyes. You can admire your work later. Now come here and help me with this, Michael ordered Eladir. Then the two of them continued to build the torpedoes while discussing their past versions. Building torpedoes were two men's job. First, Michael as a blacksmith had to build the outer shell and fill it with explosive materials. The second task fell on Eladir's shoulder as he had to engrave runes inside and outside to enhance the explosion's power upon contact as well as to harness the power of arch-energy crystals. It's done. After almost an hour later, Eladir heaved a sigh of relief and motioned Michael to see the torpedo on the table. On the outside, the torpedo looked like nothing more than a 1-meter-long cigar with fins at the end. The outer shell was built with metal and engraved with intricate runes which were barely visible to the naked eye. On contrary to how it looked, the torpedo was heavy as a boulder. Eladir had to use all his strength to roll it around. Upon reaching the table, Michael ran his hand through the torpedo, feeling the surface of his new death bringer. If his calculations were right, a single torpedo could obliterate a frigate to pieces and had a range of 20 kilometers. Now that we finished the hard part, let's move on to the easy part, said Michael. Obviously, he couldn't put these torpedoes into a cannon and fire it at his enemies. Instead, Michael had to build a special gun to use these torpedoes and an aiming mechanism. Thanks to Michael's inventor trait, building them was as easy as crafting a new bow to Michael. Chapter 854 Ghost Ships. The fierce sun beat upon the seemingly never-ending southern continent sea, reflecting the light into a blinding patch of shine. The sea was calm, pulsing and breathing rhythmically. In the calm sea, a brig sailed with the wind, patrolling the seas. The ship squealed while the sails tightened and leaped forward, away from a tiny island with a couple of coconut trees. The tame lapping of ripples against the hull rang out across the bay. As the sail with a skull painted on rose higher and higher, the glistening reflection blinded Captain Fairbank, casting a dark shadow down the ship's upper deck. Slowly it blended with the calm and sparkly orange-shaded water. The sail calmly swayed from side to side and occasionally flapped in the morning's ocean breeze. The stench of salty air gave the crew a kick of boost to tackle the day ahead of them. In the distance, a gust danced and twirled across the water's surface. The ship slowly glided forward through the mirror-like water. The puff ever so slowly crept closer as if it was the predator and everything else was the prey. Look alive, men. We have rich fat merchants to milk. Captain Fairbanks roared. The soft breeze streamed through his red hair and oval face with blue eyes. His loose white shirt fluttered in the wind, exposing his hairy chest. Fairbanks and his crew terrorized the sea under Pirate Lord Vance until the Dark Lord decided to kill Vance and many of his pirate captains for refusing his offer to join him. Fairbanks was one of the lucky ones who were spared by the Dark Lord's wrath. I have a report saying the Phoenix Manor merchants are on their way to Jysel for gem trading. So you men know the drill. We intercept, check their goods and make them pay their taxes. Fairbanks laughed out loud. A year ago he wouldn't have spoken these words even if someone had put a blade against his throat. He used to pillage merchant ships to the bones and sink them for fun. Most of the pirates lived like this and as a result, merchant ships rarely ventured into their seas. During their best days they pillaged 1 or 2 ships every 3 months and went without pillaging for the rest of the year. Sometimes 2 pirate groups would fight each other for a crate of rum or less. But everything changed when the Dark Lord conquered the seas and took over the pirates. He struck deals with the merchants and ordered the pirates to stop pillaging them like madmen. Instead of pillaging, the Dark Lord ordered the merchants to pay a percentage to the pirates every time they ventured into the southern continent for trade. Many pirates hated the idea of collecting taxes and not pillaging. But they did as they were told anyway because the pirates knew better than to mess with the Dark Lord. Those who did were brutally murdered and thrown to the sharks in front of the other pirates as a warning sign. Fairbanks was one of those who wanted to avoid ending up being shark food. At first, Fairbanks and his crew were skeptical about the Dark Lord's unconventional order, but the number of merchant ships coming to the southern continent gradually increased. Within 6 months, there were more merchant ships than pirate ships on the seas. As a result, the pirates were able to make more coins as their cut from the tax than they ever did pillaging. The pirates who felt skeptical and hated the Dark Lord for preventing them from pillaging quickly changed their minds about him. Under the Dark Lord, the pirates thrived and lived their golden age. For Fairbanks, this was just another relaxing day at the sea. His task was to intercept the merchant ships and tax them according to the goods they were carrying. After all these times, Fairbanks could do the tasks in his sleep. As he was sailing on the calm sea, his quartermaster, a dark-skinned man with nose piercing, rushed toward Fairbanks. "Captain, we have spotted a ghost ship," the quartermaster said. His dark eyes contained a sliver of fear. Fairbanks had the same fear in his eyes as he heard about ships with no symbols or crest on sails attacking the pirate ships and disappearing. Rumor had it that the Dark Lord's naval army has lost 5 pirate ships to these ghost ships. Fairbanks' hands reached for the spyglass dangling on his waist and looked in the direction the quartermaster was pointing. Through the spyglass, Fairbanks saw a lone ship heading in their direction. There it was, a frigate with no symbols or crest on its gray sails. As soon as Fairbanks spotted the ghost ship, a strange bell echoed through the calm sea. It sounded like a cry mixed with both anger and sadness. "What are your orders, Captain?" asked the quartermaster. Fairbanks lowered his spyglass and turned his gaze back to the quartermaster. "Man the cannons and prepare for a battle," said Fairbanks. His voice was loud enough for the entire crew to hear him. Soon they all grabbed a spyglass and scanned the horizon. "Ghost ship spotted." At that moment, a pirate manning the crow's nest shouted, pointing at the horizon. Almost everyone on the upper deck heard and saw the ghost ship. It was too late for panic control. "Prepare the cannons," the quartermaster roared as his orders swept across the deck. The pirates panicked and stood still like statues for a few moments. They spent too long collecting taxes and enjoying life without battle, so when they were ordered to prepare for battle, their bodies refused to move. It took them a few moments to realize the danger they were in. "We will bring their heads to the Dark Lord," Fairbanks shouted. The moment the crew heard the name of the Dark Lord, they snapped back to reality because the fear of the ghost ship was nowhere close to the fear they had of the Dark Lord. The crew quickly reached the cannons, and some ran down to the lower decks to convey the battle order to the crew down there. While the crew was preparing for a battle, Fairbanks raised his spyglass to take a look at the ghost ship again. To his complete shock, he saw no ship through the spyglass. He frantically moved the spyglass left and right, trying to locate the ship. Looking at Fairbanks, the quartermaster looked through his own spyglass and was stunned by the sight of an empty horizon. The ghost ship was nowhere to be found. "Do you see the ghost ship?" the quartermaster shouted at the pirate standing atop the crow's nest. But before he could answer the quartermaster, the pirate fell down from the top and splattered all over the deck, painting the floor red. The crew was stunned by what had just happened. In their shocked state, they failed to notice the iron arrow on the floor, covered in the pirate's blood and flesh. Suddenly, out of nowhere, the ghost ship appeared closer to Fairbanks' ship. The crew and the captain were caught off guard. They had no idea where it came from. "Take cover," Fairbanks shouted as every fiber in his body screamed at him to lower his head and duck. He was a veteran and had enough battle experience to guide his crew out of thick situations. However, his battle experience was overwhelmed by the sheer power of the ghost ship. All the 50 cannons on one side of the hull exploded at the same time and bombarded Fairbanks' brig. 9 out of 10 times, a brig had no chance of winning against a frigate. Unfortunately for Fairbanks, his ship was too close to the frigate and unprepared for return fire. Fairbanks ducked down and held the helm as tight as he could. When he slightly raised his head, he saw his quartermaster stumbling around the deck with a large hole in his chest. One of the cannonballs went straight through his chest. Blood oozed out of his mouth, and before the quartermaster could hit the ground, another cannonball took his head clean off. A loud whistling sound kept ringing in his ears, preventing him from thinking straight. Most of the crew were either thrown off the deck or dead by the cannon fire. When the ghost ship was reloading its cannons, Fairbanks stood up and rotated the helm as fast as he could. The ship had taken too much damage. The mainsail poles were barely standing, and 1 or 2 cannonballs fire away from breaking down. As a captain, it was his task to save the ship and the rest of the crew. He frantically rotated the helm to sail away from the frigate. While trying to escape, Fairbanks looked at the ghost ship and saw the hostile crew. They were all dressed in some kind of silver robes with pointy hats. None of their faces were exposed as they covered themselves from head to toe. "Full sail," Fairbanks shouted. He knew it was too late for them to return fire. The only hope they had was escaping the frigate before it reloads its cannons. Boom. Out of nowhere, a giant arrow hit the front deck and split open the brig in half. Fairbank failed even to see where the arrows were coming from. More arrows rained down upon the deck, impaling everyone and everything. With the front half slowly sinking down, there was no chance for Fairbank to escape the frigate that had almost finished reloading its cannons. "I am not going down without a fight," Fairbank roared as he unsheathed his cutlass. He ran toward the rope they used to board the hostile ships and tried to swing to the frigate. He could have escaped if he had let go of the rope and jumped into the water. However, he was a pirate through and through. He may have let go of pillaging, but he would never die without putting up a fight. When he was about to land on the deck, he heard another volley of explosions. Suddenly, everything turned dark around him. The last thing he remembered was a sharp pain in his head. Then, his whole body felt light. Chapter 855 New Weapon for Big Bertha. Meanwhile, back in the forge, Michael finished forging everything he needed to use the torpedoes and prepared to leave. He put out the fire in the furnace while Eladir put the torpedoes in the space ring. To snuff out the flames, Michael had to pull the lever beside the furnace down. As soon as he pulled it down, a chilling stream of frost fired out of the ancient ice core and put out the flames. "Let's go," Michael said. Eladir nodded and walked toward the portal to leave the forge. After they entered the portal, a strange sensation ran through their bodies. The sudden drop in the temperature affected their bodies and minds. It took Eladir a few moments to feel normal. On the other hand, when they stepped out of the portal, Michael saw Gaia was waiting for them with Azazel. "We have a situation," Gaia creased her brows. She didn't even bother to inquire with them about the portal or the forge. Michael knew something was amiss. "What happened?" Michael asked. "Do you remember the ghost ships that's been attacking our ship in the southern continent?" Gaia asked Michael as he nodded. Corey complained about these ships at the gathering. Apparently, these ships were using hit-and-run tactics with the backup of killing themselves in case someone managed to capture them. Before leaving for the demon's grave, Michael ordered Corey to get to the bottom of it and unwrap the mystery behind those unknown ships. But judging by the look on Gaia's face, he could tell these ships had appeared once again. "They sank one of our ships a few minutes ago," said Gaia. "You should see this, my lord." Azazel handed over the tablet-sized mirror in his hand to Michael. The mirror flickered for a moment before showing Michael a calm sea from the point of view of someone near the rudder. "Captain, we have spotted a ghost ship." Michael saw a dark-skinned man in the mirror. "After a few attacks, Corey asked me for spiders so she could monitor every captain under her command." Gaia explained to Michael why the ship captain was wearing a spider. He totally focused in the mirror, searching for the ghost ship. "Ghost ship spotted." Michael saw the pirate atop the crow's nest pointing at the horizon. Soon, the pirate captain turned his gaze toward the direction the pirate pointed. "Get to the good point," said Gaia and slid her fingers through the mirror as the feed in the mirror played faster. She removed her hands from the mirror when a gray ship sailed beside the pirate captain's ship. The feed was not stable as he was covering down from cover. Still, Michael was able to pause the feed and take a clear look at the hostile ship. This frigate in the mirror had a grayish hull, sails with no crest or emblem, and a crew completely covered from head to toe. If Michael wasn't a blacksmith, he would have missed the complex build of the ship. Although it looked like a typical frigate, the ship was built differently. For example, the hull had tiny holes the size of a fist under every hull cannon. On top of that, the cannons on the upper deck were different from typical cannons. They were built in a rectangular shape instead of a conical shape. "I am not going down without a fight." Michael saw the pirate captain standing up and running toward the rope despite the bombardment. He grabbed the rope, swinging toward the ghost ship. The feed distorted in the mirror before everything turned blue. "When did this happen exactly?" asked Michael. 5 minutes ago. Big Bertha was sailing nearby, so I ordered them to head to the ambush location," said Gaia. Her eyes glimmered with killing intent, and one could literally feel the cold, murderous aura around her. "They will pay for what they did," Michael calmly said. He extended his palm toward Eladir as the elf removed the space ring containing the torpedo from his finger and placed it on Michael's palm. Without uttering a word, Gaia stepped closer to him and waited for him to activate the teleportation. Thanks to the runic teleportation, Michael was able to directly reach the Big Bertha in a blink of an eye. Full sails, full sails. Short was running around Big Bertha's upper deck, ordering his crew around. As a quartermaster to the temporary captain of Big Bertha, Corey had quite an authority among the pirates. Shorty didn't earn his position by simply being cute or bootlicking but through his hard work. Michael and Gaia were impressed when he completely stopped drinking and cultivated diligently for the past year. The Olympus around Shorty's wrist was a symbol of his hard work and a painful reminder to anyone who dares to mess with him. Usually, the Big Bertha would be anchored at Corey's island and rarely sailed the seas. However, when Corey heard about another attack in the Dark Queen's order, she sailed to where the ambush happened. Since they were alone, Gaia hoped the ghost ships might try to attack Big Bertha. Unlike Fairbank's crew, the Big Bertha crew was trained to be on guard always. Among the pirates, they lived the longest and had the most battle experience. Coupled with Corey's talents in the rudder, Big Bertha could be ranked as one of the most powerful ships in the world. "Captain, I can see some debris on the water," Shorty came running to Corey and said. "Lower the sails." Corey's order surprised Shorty and the crew. They were certain that Corey would order them to raise the sails to gain maximum speed. But on the contrary, she ordered them to lower the sails. Despite the shocking order, Shorty nodded as the crew pulled down the ropes, lowering the black sail with a crimson-red skull painted on the center. The ship gradually lost its speed, and since the wind was against them, they almost came to a halt. Meanwhile, the crew loaded the cannons and the mortar on the front of the deck. Once they could see the ghost ship, they would bombard it with all the firepower they had. As they slowly sailed toward the sea, where Corey noticed black smoke emanating, Big Bertha sailed toward the debris at a snail's pace. Suddenly, Corey felt a strong gust of wind blow past her. She quickly turned around to see the Dark Lord appear out of thin air with the Dark Queen. "My lord, my lady," Corey quickly bowed toward Michael and Gaia. "Captain is on board." Shorty roared as he ran toward Michael and Gaia. He smiled from ear to ear looking at them. Michael acknowledged Shorty with a friendly nod. Corey was about to say something when Michael ascended into the air and landed on the crow's nest. "Let's see where you are," Michael muttered to himself as his pupils shrunk to the size of a tiny dot. His perception swept across the sea. Michael closed his eyes for a moment, focusing on the environmental scanning. A few seconds later, Michael's eyes abruptly opened. He slowly turned around to see a ship far away on the horizon. The ship was too far for normal eyesight or even for the spyglass. But Michael could see the ship sailing with no crest or symbol on its sails. It was the same ship that sank Fairbank's ship. There was no doubt in Michael's mind. Michael's eyes completely turned pitch black, and then his pupils glowed like rubies for a moment. "Turn around the ship and sail to the southwest," Michael's voice echoed through the ship. Following Michael's order, Gaia ascended into the air and floated to Michael's side. "Did you find it?" asked Gaia, her eyes glimmering with intense murdering intent. Michael nodded. "They'll see how they hit and run this time," Michael snickered. "Just sail toward it as slow as you can. Let them come to us. I have a surprise for them." Gaia nodded as Michael leaped from the crow's nest into the water. Under the water, everything turned dark blue. Michael willed the APD to inject a pill into his bloodstream that would allow him to breathe underwater. He moved through the water like a shark until he reached the very bottom of Big Bertha. His eyes turned black, shooting dark beams at the hull. Countless bubbles appeared around the dark beams as the beams vaporized the water in an instant. Deep orange lines appeared in the black hull everywhere the dark beams touched. Michael cut a 3-meter-long and 2-meter-wide piece of hull and took out a tubular pipe from his space ring. The silver metal pipe perfectly fitted into the hole Michael had just carved out. After placing the pipe into the hole, Michael closed the hole once again with the wood and swam to the other side to repeat the same process. Michael spent the next 15 minutes moving along with the ship and fitting Big Bertha with the torpedo gun. Now that he had finished installing the guns, Big Bertha had two unique shots, the mortar and the torpedoes. Compared to the mortar, the torpedo had 5 times the range. Plus, when aiming at the target using the mortar, it created a red spotlight which was called the Red Death by the Ithilien people. Contrary to the mortar, the torpedo had no indicators visible to the enemies. Any ship that was unfortunate enough to meet the torpedo would get obliterated without even knowing what hit them. This made the torpedoes the perfect weapon to use against the ghost ships. Back on the upper deck, Shorty and some of the crew kept staring into the ocean, wondering how in the hell the Dark Lord was staying in the water for so long. "Hey look!" The pirate next to Shorty pointed at the horizon, where Shorty noticed a lone ship. "Wait for the Dark Lord's orders," Corey shouted when she saw the crew agitating to man the cannons and bombard the ghost ship to pieces. Even Corey had a difficult time rotating the rudder instead of firing the mortar. However, the Dark Queen ordered them to stay calm and let the ghost ship attack them from a safe distance. If what Gaia learned about these ghost ships were true, they wouldn't dare to enter into close combat with Big Bertha. They knew about the Red Death. Therefore, they would try to hit and run while keeping themselves out of the mortar's range. As they were sailing toward the ghost ship, Michael shot out of the water and landed right beside Corey. "Put these on." Michael handed over black goggles to Gaia and asked her to wear them. "Okay." Gaia had no idea what it was, but she wore them as everything around her dimmed due to the black glass. Then Michael gave her a conical wooden piece with a button on top. Gaia grabbed the wood and placed her thumb on the button. Time for some payback. Michael cracked his neck looking at the ghost ship in the distance. Chapter 856 Torpedo in Action. Gaia gawked around the calm sea with the goggles on her eyes. At first, everything darkened, but soon, a red appeared before her sight. "What is this red dot?" Gaia raised her hand, trying to touch the virtual dot. "That's how you aim the torpedoes. They will hit wherever you put the red dot and push the button. This button is just a temporary measure. I will build a trigger in the rudder later," said Michael. Of course, Michael himself could have worn the goggles and fired the torpedoes. The reason he chose not to was he had other plans. To be precise, a backup plan in case the ghost ship crew tried to kill themselves before they could apprehend them. As far as Michael was concerned, this facade had gone long enough. It was time he weeded out his enemies one by one. "I have to adjust myself to this." Gaia stepped away from the rudder and joined Michael on the ship's front. Michael's long coat and hair fluttered in the wind as he stood there with his hands tufted into his pockets. Everyone on the ship had their gazes fixated on the ghost ship. Since the Dark Lord himself was with them, the crew's morale was sky-high. Excitement coursed through their veins as they waited for the ghost ship to get closer. The closer they got to the ghost ship, the more excited everyone felt, especially Shorty, who couldn't wait to put the Olympus and the spell he had learned recently to use. The cannon crew was on the verge of lighting the fuse and bombarding the ghost ship. However, the ghost ship was still out of their range. Suddenly they all heard a strange cry in the air. Michael recognized the sound. This was the same cry he heard when Fairbank and his ship were attacked. "They have noticed us," said Michael. "Don't attack them until I say so," Michael said before diving back into the sea. After Michael disappeared into the ocean, Gaia returned to Corey at the helm. To Gaia's surprise, the ghost ship halted, sailing toward them just outside the mortar's firing range. It was like the ghost ship crew knew exactly how far the mortar could hit them. "So they had done their homework," Gaia muttered under her breath. "What are they doing?" Cor asked as she saw the ghost ship slowly turning around. "They want to stay outside the mortar's firing range," Gaia said. "Should we catch up to them?" asked Corey, but Gaia shook her head. "If we rush them, they might escape. I have a feeling their ship is faster than ours," Gaia said, walking to the rails. She leaned on the rails and watched the ghost ship without batting an eye. The red dot in her sight was right on the ship. If she wanted, she could fire the torpedoes. However, she had to wait for Michael's order. Meanwhile, inside the sea, Michael soared through the deep sea toward the ghost ship. He dived deeper into the ocean and used the lightning dash to increase his speed. In a few moments, he vaguely saw the ghost ship's dark shadow in the near distance. As he moved closer, he noticed strange ripples under the ghost ship. He closed his eyes and focused on the surroundings. A strange noise, a rhythmic pulse, reached his ears. The ghost ship was creating some kind of pulse around it. Because Michael was a resident of Earth, he was familiar with the sonar technology ships used to detect things underwater. To be honest, Michael was surprised and couldn't even believe the ship was using something similar to sonar. But the energy pulses he felt were definitely some kind of detection system. Everything made sense to Michael when he thought about it. If the ghost ship didn't have a way to detect hostiles under the water, one could swim underwater and catch them off guard just like he was planning to do. There were some runes and arrays to achieve the same in Cultivation continents. Considering the southern continent was inside the void line, runes and arrays wouldn't work here. Hence, someone had to build a new device to achieve the same effects. Michael was surprised that someone who wasn't him had actually managed to do so. "System, scan the ship." Michael ordered the system. He needed to be sure. "The system requires 10,000 badass points to scan the ship." "Go for it," Michael confirmed. While the system's invisible rays were scanning the ship, Michael moved backward from the ghost ship. He didn't want the pulses to detect him. No matter what contraptions they used today, he would start dismantling this unknown enemy. His enemies had mistaken his patience for a lack of action. The system can confirm the host's suspicion. The ghost ship has indeed a device that mimics sonar pulses to detect hostile activity underwater in a 10-meter radius. A powerful bolt of lightning to the hull could disrupt the device. As Michael was contemplating whether he should disrupt the device or not, he heard the cannons crackling inside the hull. The very next moment, the cannons exploded, sending a volley of flaming cannonballs toward Big Bertha. Michael was pushed back for a few meters by the shock wave that traveled around the ghost ship. Michael quickly turned on the thermal vision and turned in the direction of Big Bertha. Once again, the ghost ship surprised Michael with its cannon gun range. After he heard the explosion, Michael formed a bubble around his head and contacted Gaia through the earpiece. "Are you hit?" Michael asked Gaia. Michael heard Shorty and the crew shouting and cursing the ghost ship. It took Gaia a few seconds to respond to him. "How in the fuck are they hitting us from this far? Where are you?" "I am losing my fucking patience here," Gaia roared in pure hatred toward the ghost ship. Her thumb was itching to press the button and fire the torpedoes. "Fire the cannons and pretend you are putting up a fight. Let them think they have the upper hand," said Michael. No one in the ghost ship knew Michael was watching them from below. Having no idea, they kept bombarding Big Bertha. Michael didn't worry about his ship because it was built to withstand huge amounts of damage. It would take 2 man-o'-wars to attack Big Bertha from both sides at the same time to cripple her down. Surprisingly, the ghost ship's cannons had both range and power. On top of that, the reload time was way shorter than Michael had anticipated. After the third volley of cannon fire, Gaia contacted Michael. "We are taking some damage, human." "Anytime now," said Gaia. Michael noticed the ghost ship slowly sailing toward Big Bertha. Now that they had successfully damaged Big Bertha, the ghost ship crew had gotten more courageous. As Michael ordered, Big Bertha fired all her cannons, but none of the cannonballs could reach the ghost ship. For a few minutes, the roars of both ships echoed through the calm sea. As they continued the naval battle, the air reeked of gunpowder and burnt wood. From an outsider's perspective, Big Bertha was losing the battle because she caused no damage to the ghost ship while the latter bombarded Big Bertha with each round of fire. When the ghost ship fired the cannons for the 4th time, Michael clenched his fist as lightning bolts appeared and crackled around his wrists. He waited for the cannons to stop spitting out cannonballs. With lightning bolts crackling around his wrist, Michael followed behind the ghost ship. "Gaia?" Michael contacted Gaia. "Do the honor," Michael snickered. Finally, Gaia was elated to hear Michael's order. On Big Bertha's upper deck, Gaia stood up from the cover and strolled toward the edge of the ship. Wooden splinters flew everywhere as the cannons on each side let out thick clouds of smoke after firing. Despite the chaos, Gaia stood firm and raised the button. "Say hello to this bitch." Gaia pressed the button as the entire ship trembled for a moment. Except for Gaia, none of the crew were aware of the new weapon Michael installed in Big Bertha. She creased her sword-like brows as she saw no smoke or fire. In fact, nothing happened for a few minutes. "My lady," Short crouched toward Gaia and pulled her sleeves. "You should duck down." "They are preparing to fire again," Shorty warned Gaia. Boom. Suddenly they heard a clap of thunder rumbling in the distance, and boom, the ghost ship's left half exploded to bits and pieces. Michael's crew was completely stunned. If Gaia didn't know about the torpedoes, she would have thought the gunpowder barrels stored inside the ghost ship had caught fire somehow and exploded from within. The torpedo obliterated the ghost ship and turned its one half into charcoal wood. "Hell yeah." Shorty bounced up and down in pure joy. But Gaia wasn't as happy as the crew. Instead, she focused on the calm sea around the burning ghost ship. "Anytime now," she mumbled under her breath. As she expected, Michael shot out of the water like a whale on drugs and landed straight beside the ghost ship's captain. The crew atop the ghost ship was in chaos. They ran around like headless chickens in their weird gray robes. When Michael landed on their ship, they were completely caught off guard. The man in front of the rudder reached for his sword, only to get stabbed in the neck with an injection. His body froze as he fell down on the deck. Then Michael turned his focus to the rest. The moment Michael's gaze swept across the deck, an invisible force snuffed out the flames and darkened the ship. Everything turned dead silent for a few moments. The only sound they heard at that time was the lightning bolts crackling around Michael's wrist. The surviving crew immediately reached out for the dagger dangling on their waist. According to Corey, they used this dagger to cut their throats to avoid being captured. As the crew reached for the dagger, Michael simply raised his hand, sending a couple of wind blades toward them. The next moment, several heads flew in the air as blood sprayed out of headless bodies. From the beginning, Michael had no plans to take everyone hostage but one, the captain. As for the others, they could go to hell and wait for the others. Chapter 857. Drawing the Dark Lord's attention in a blink of an eye, Michael removed their heads clean off. Blood was everywhere as some of the headless bodies stammered around the deck before collapsing down into the water or to the floor. The half of the ship Michael stood on was slowly sinking into the water. He grabbed the captain by his collar and dragged him down the stairs and into the captain's cabin. Although Michael's instincts told him that he wouldn't find a thing inside, he still wanted to make sure before the ship completely sank into the water. Michael turned the knob, but the door didn't even budge. Without a second thought, Michael kicked the door as it crumbled down like a withered piece of wood. When the door was broken down by Michael, an empty dark room with a table and a few chairs welcomed him. For a captain's cabin, it was completely empty, without a single parchment or a piece of paper except for the Mao on the table. Michael strolled toward the table, dragging the ghost ship captain. The floor creaked as Michael felt the ship tilting to a side. He quickly ascended to the air to keep himself balanced. The salt water rapidly made its way to the cabin through the cracks, speeding up the sinking process. Michael quickly grabbed the map on the table and flew out through the door. But before he flew away from the sinking ship, Michael hovered toward the main sailing pole that slowly tilted to the side and was on the verge of completely falling down. He grabbed a silver box attached to it. The box had a handle on top and was engraved with numerous runes and designs. With the box and the ghost ship captain, Michael flew straight to Big Bertha. Suddenly Michael stopped in midair. Gaia felt something was wrong when she saw him suddenly stop flying, so she came to his side. "Take him in this box to the castle." Michael's voice had a bit of seriousness. Hence, Gaia didn't ask him any further questions at the moment and took out a teleportation scroll from her space ring. She then grabbed the ghost ship captain by his collar and the box and activated the teleportation scroll. As Gaia vanished into thin air, something flew straight toward Michael. It was an arrow big enough to impale a dragon. The arrow was at least 6 meters long and as thick as an average man's hand. When it was just a few inches away from his head, Michael caught the arrow as another arrow shot out of him from above. Michael caught the second arrow as easily as he caught the first one. When the third one soared through the air toward him, Michael's eyes turned pitch black before dark beams shot out and burnt the arrow to oblivion. Then, Michael rose above the clouds at full speed, leaving an afterimage of himself that lasted for a few moments. Michael flew through the cluster of white clouds and found himself floating in a blue sky. Below him, the clouds stretched as far as one could see like a floor made of white cotton candy. Then another arrow shot out from the clouds, only to get obliterated by Michael's dark beams. Michael indeed noticed these arrows obliterating Fairbank's attempt to escape the battle via the mirror. Even when Michael was underwater, he scanned for the second ship but found none. Hence, Michael was led to believe the second ship or the thing responsible for the arrows left the area, out of his environmental scanning range. To be honest, Michael was surprised when he suddenly sensed something above him. Floating above the clouds, Michael activated his thermal vision and finally saw a ship the size of a typical fishing boat hovering in the air with a couple of men atop. They were using a giant ballista to fire these big arrows. This was another freaky invention he saw today. Not that the ballista itself surprised Michael, but the fact someone had built it to fire arrows from a mile afar surprised him. For him, the ballista or the sonar wouldn't be a problem at all. The same couldn't be said for his army. With 100 or so ballistas like this, one could take on an army and completely obliterate them. He wanted to find the root of this problem before it grew into a giant headache for him and his army, especially if they could fly above the ground and target the army on the ground. Michael cast the lightning dash spell, flew straight to the flying ship, and saw 2 men dressed in white fur coats and metal armor operating the ballista. With Michael's black robes, he stood out among the white clouds. The 2 of them were stunned to see the Dark Lord up close. As soon as they saw him, they reached for the daggers to cut their throats. They didn't even try to fight the Dark Lord because they knew there was no point in fighting him. Michael was disappointed to see them try to kill themselves. Without giving them the pleasure of a quick death, Michael dashed at them and landed right beside them in a blink of an eye. "Nice ballista," said Michael before grabbing their throats. He looked at the daggers in their hands as dark beams shot out of his hands and cut off their wrists. Blood sprayed out of their wrists. Still they didn't cry or shout. Instead, all Michael heard was muffled groans. He couldn't see their faces through the conical mask they wore, resembling a Halloween ghost costume. "Let me see your pretty faces." Michael headbutted one guy in the face and put him down. Then he pulled out the mask from the other one. An elf? Michael was surprised to see the pointy ears of the man. At that time, the one who was knocked down stood up back to his feet. The man tried to stop Michael from removing his mask, but Michael was too fast for the man to react in time. Michael expected to see an elf behind the mask, but to his surprise, the man behind the mask was a beast man. His face was completely covered in fur and resembled a puma. An elf and a beast man working together. "Now I have seen it all," Michael snickered. Michael's hold around their throats tightened as he expected them to scream. Once again they only groaned and didn't even utter a word. While Michael was manhandling the elf and the beast man, he looked over his shoulder to see Gaia flying toward him. When she saw the scene, her brows arched up. Who are these clowns and what is this thing? Gaia floated to the ballista and stared at it curiously. She was more curious about the ballista than the elf and the beast man. As far as she could tell, they were dead men. This would be a good time for you two to say something, said Michael. Thursday, instead of talking, the elf spat out. When the blob of saliva was just a few inches away from reaching Michael's face, Gaia put her palm between the spit and Michael's face. The blob of saliva hit her palm. The next thing the elf remembered was a sharp pain in his face. Michael heard a sickening crunch and saw the bone sticking out of the elf's nose. She snatched the elf from Michael's hand and threw him overboard. Even after seeing Gaia throw his buddy overboard, the beastman had no signs of fear or shock in his eyes. The beastman remained calm and collected while the elf soared through the clouds and headed straight for the ocean. They were at least 12 kilometers high from the sea. So the elf had no chance of surviving the fall despite the sea below. The moment the elf's body hit the ocean, his bones would shatter, and his internal organs would become a mess. Do you hear him screaming? Michael asked Gaia, although he knew the answer very well. For a moment, Gaia was confused by his question. But when she thought about it, it felt weird to Gaia. Any sane person would have screamed by now or at least let out some sound. Yet the elf uttered no word. Gaia jumped down from the ship to find out why the elf wasn't screaming. Michael, on the other hand, went with a simple approach. He forced open the beastman's mouth. To his surprise, Michael saw no tongue inside the beastman's mouth. He was not an expert in beastmen anatomy, but he was pretty sure they had tongues. Did the cat get your tongue? Michael joked. Jokes aside, Michael had a bad feeling in his guts. Whatever group these guys belonged to, they had powerful weapons, training to control their emotions, and soldiers with no tongue. The latter made sure that even if they were caught somehow, they wouldn't be able to utter a word. After seeing no tongue inside his mouth, Michael couldn't help thinking about whether the ghost ship captain was the same or not. In case he didn't have a tongue, there was no point in interrogating him. A soldier who was willing to lose their tongue and kill themselves wouldn't give out the secrets of their employers. The beastman squirmed and even tried to bite Michael. His eyes were filled with intense hatred toward Michael. Meanwhile, Gaia returned to the ship with the elf in her hand. The elf's golden hair was a mess, and he looked flustered after almost falling to his death. The elf's mind may have been resistant to fear, but his body acted differently to the fall. Put them in another cell, said Michael, taking out a syringe filled with gray liquid. He injected the paralyzer into the beastman's neck and did the same to the elf. The injection paralyzed both the elf and the beastman so they would not be able to kill themselves in the cell. Afterward, Michael teleported the prisoners and the ballista. Before teleporting, he destroyed the flying ship to pieces with a ring of fire. By the time Michael left the sea, the ghost ship completely sank into the water, and Big Bertha was on her way to Corey's island for repair. As for Michael, he had 3 prisoners to interrogate, although 2 of them had no way of speaking. Chapter 858H for Hammond. Previous chapter. Back in the castle, Michael stood outside a room with the glass between him and the prisoners. Gaia put all 3 prisoners in the same room and tied them in a chair. Her white robes were drenched in blood. The blood wasn't hers but the prisoners. Gaia showed them no mercy. The ground beneath them was littered with nails, teeth, pieces of flesh, and blood. Unfortunately, no matter how many ribs she broke, nails she pulled out, and teeth she knocked out, the prisoners didn't agree to give them information by writing. After 3 hours of non-stop torture, Gaia grew tired of it and stormed out of the room. I hate to say it, Michael, but they are not going to break, said Gaia. Anyone can be broken, Gaia. What irks me is even if we break them, I don't think they'll have something valuable to share. Someone with brains and resources is pulling the strings behind the scene. If what I've seen told me anything, it's that their employer doesn't make rookie mistakes. They pulled out their tongues to keep them from talking. The ballista might reveal more things than these guys, so what should we do with them? Asked Gaia. Whoever is behind this, we should send them a message. Michael turned around and headed toward the door. Before turning the knob, Michael looked over his shoulder at Gaia. In blood. Then Michael left the room, leaving Gaia to deal with the 3. Since the interrogation had borne no fruit, Michael's next destination was the portal hall where they put the ballista. By the time Michael arrived at the hall, no one was there. Gaia put the ballista near the portal and Elidar's work table. The sight of a familiar weapon such as this reminded Michael of medieval war times on Earth. I wonder who built this, Michael muttered to himself. Deep down, he felt there was a connection between the ballista and the creator of the Death Kiss crossbows. Otherwise, it would be a damn phenomenon to have two geniuses capable of building mass destruction at the same time. The first thing Michael noticed about the ballista was the wood they used to build it. Despite how big it looked, the ballista was extremely light. The reason was the wood, which was sturdy yet light in weight. Michael walked around the big ballista, studying every inch of it. Where did they get this wood? Michael asked himself. The wood didn't seem like a common one. So if he could track down its origin, he knew he might be able to identify the person behind the recent attacks on his pirate crew. If Michael hadn't seen the sonar pulses and the ballista, he would have let his subordinates figure it out. After seeing them, however, he knew this was a task for him. The ballista could simply fire out arrows the size between 6 to 8 feet in length, and the weapon itself had the overall size of a fully grown elephant. While he was studying the ballista, Nightmare and Vidora flew into the room. They almost crashed into the ballista when they saw Michael standing beside it. Fortunately, Nightmare was not at his true grown size. If that were the case, the ballista would have been crushed into pieces by him. "Can't you play outside?" Michael asked as Vidora landed on his shoulder and Nightmare landed on top of the ballista. "They are too much of chicken to fly through the storm," Nightmare chuckled. "Who do you call a chicken, shithead?" Iag snapped. "Quit messing with her, Nightmare." Sarba tried to defuse the situation as always. "If you are going to fight, take it outside." "I have something important to do," said Michael. He had no interest in meddling with their sibling quarreling. Finally, Vidora and Nightmare halted their bickering for a moment and turned their focus to the ballista. "Oh yeah. I heard you caught the sons of butchers who were attacking our pirates," said Iag. "Caught one of them. But they are not talking," Michael shrugged. "Why not?" "I bet we can make them talk," Iag snickered. "You can't," Michael said as he squatted before the ballista and looked at its bottom. As he expected, there were countless gears and mechanisms built under. Although Michael knew he could have built a ballista with more efficiency and power, the one before him did surprise him. Whoever built the ballista must be a once-in-lifetime genius. Usually, the cultivators tended to be on the dumb side as they always preferred to solve problems with spells and murders. So they rarely had to use their brains. What if we did? Sarba tried to stop Iag from betting against Michael because he felt something was amiss. However, their sister was hot-headed and had already hatched a plan to get something out of their bet. "You can ask me anything," Michael didn't even turn around as he casually said. Just sending them away would be a win for Michael. "You better keep your word then," Iag proudly said before flapping her wings. Having no choice, Sarba and Kane joined her in her quest to make the prisoners talk. After Vidora left the hall, Nightmare dropped down to the ground, landing beside Michael. "They aren't dead, right?" asked Nightmare. "Nope," Michael shook his head. "They just don't have tongues." For a moment, Nightmare had neither an expression nor a word. But when he imagined Iag's face when they realized the prisoners had no tongues, Nightmare broke into laughter. It took Nightmare a brief moment to stop laughing and turn his gaze back to Michael, who seemed completely focused on the ballista. "You need any help?" "What are you looking for?" asked Nightmare. "Creators leave their mark on the thing they created. It's like a signature. So I am hoping to find one left behind, whoever built this," said Michael. Nightmare frowned as he raised his leg and placed it on the crescent-shaped handle. "Do you mean something like this?" Michael raised his head and took a closer look at the handle. However, he saw nothing but plain wood. "I don't see anything," said Michael. Nightmare was surprised because he could see a symbol resembling the letter H dimly glistening on the handle. "Don't you see the glow on the handle?" "Take a closer look." Nightmare rubbed the symbol. Still, Michael saw nothing. Michael rubbed his chin as he realized the mark may be invisible to the naked eye. Luckily, Michael had various visions as he switched to the thermal vision first. The result disappointed Michael as he saw no symbol like Nightmare suggested. So Michael switched to another vision and saw nothing. One by one, Michael used all of his vision, yet the result was the same. Michael knew dragons had a special vision that enabled them to see the world from a different view. Unfortunately, there was no potion or technique to mimic their sight. Therefore, Michael had to rely on Nightmare completely. However, that didn't mean Michael had no way of seeing the symbol. He quickly took out a parchment, an ink bottle, and a platter. Under Nightmare's curious gaze, Michael poured the ink onto the platter. "Draw me what you see on the parchment," said Michael. "Nice idea." Nightmare nodded as he dipped his claw into the ink. Michael watched Nightmare slowly draw the symbol on the parchment. "Done." Nightmare surprised Michael with his drawing skills. To be honest, Nightmare seemed like a better painter than Michael himself. When Nightmare lifted his leg off the parchment, Michael saw a symbol resembling the letter H. H? Michael tilted his head as he took the parchment in his hand. The H on the parchment looked exactly the same as the symbol Hammond engraved on his inventions. Of course, Michael didn't know any of this, just like Hammond didn't know the Dark Lord was staring at his symbol. In fact, Hammond didn't even know someone had used his invention to attack the Dark Lord's army. As Michael was staring at the parchment, Ricky entered the hall carrying a golden scroll in his hand. "My lord," Ricky bowed toward Michael and handed over the scroll to Michael. "We received this via an eagle," said Ricky as Michael opened the scroll. Nightmare flapped his wings once and leaped onto Michael's shoulder to have a better view of the scroll. Thanks to Gaia, who taught him how to read, Nightmare could read everything on the scroll. "I will wait for you at the same place we met before. Meet me at dawn tomorrow." Nightmare slowly read the words. Unlike Nightmare, Michael recognized the handwriting as soon as he laid eyes on the scroll. To be honest, he was waiting for a scroll from the Empress. He had a feeling she wanted to talk about the dwarves and their mass-destructive weapons. One way or another, the Empress problem got solved. She wanted the weapons gone, and Noah made sure of that. But Michael had a feeling the destruction of the weapon and the prototype was not the end but only the beginning. "You can leave," Michael dismissed Ricky and turned his gaze back to the ballista. "They want to play with toys," Michael muttered as he walked around the ballista. The images of Fairbank and his crew's death flashed across Michael's mind. He may have not known them personally, but they all served him loyally. It was his responsibility to avenge them. No matter what, Michael wouldn't rest until he made whoever initiated the plan to attack them pay with their lives. "I will show the toys I have," Michael snickered. His mind always began to craft new weapons to build, but first, he had to send a message to whoever built the ballista and decided to use it against him. The next day when the sun rose, the entire continent of Azer was in shock. But it wasn't Michael's intention to terrorize the Azer continent. Instead, he wanted everyone in Elon to know what would happen if they dared to go against the Dark Lord. Michael particularly wanted the news to reach Noah's home, the Winston Manor, who was preparing for the baby shower. Unknown to them, the god of time and space was planning to crash their party. Chapter 859. The man behind the invention's previous chapter. Alicia and Norvin were on their way to Ithelin, at least where Ithelin was before Michael obliterated the entire island. The Guardian Guild had sealed everything around in a 5-mile radius with an array to prevent people from traveling to the radioactive area. Before the Guardians sealed the area under Noah's order, rogue cultivators and people dived into the ocean, hoping to find some treasures underneath. Some of them did find some valuables that fell into the water before Michael blasted the island. In the daytime the area looked no different than the rest, but at night, one could see the glistening array around the area. The sea was calm, pulsing rhythmically and breathing with cadence. By the time Alicia and Norvin reached their destination, they were welcomed by a couple of guardians who were tasked with patrolling the area. These guardians' main task was to prevent people from treasure hunting in the water. Ever since they were assigned, nothing ever interesting happened. Some days these guardians hoped for something to happen. Unfortunately for them, their prayers were answered by the Dark Lord himself. Guardian Captain Alicia, a blonde-haired youngster, bowed toward Alicia and nodded at Norvin, who sat atop Alicia's shoulders in his true form. "Where is it?" Alicia asked the Guardian. Fear and relief emerged on the Guardian's face at the same time. He motioned them to follow him as he ascended higher into the air. Then, the Guardian slowly flew forward until Alicia noticed something hanging from a couple of black balloons. The midnight black immediately reminded Alicia of the Dark Lord. Everyone in the world knew the Dark Lord was obsessed with the color black, which symbolized darkness. More Guardians were hovering around the balloons while keeping a safe distance from them in case they exploded. They all turned around and heaved a sigh of relief when they saw Alicia and Norvin. From this moment onward, it was Alicia's problem. To be honest, they didn't want to deal with the balloons. Alicia noticed the intense fear in their eyes. "Damn!" Norvin's brows arched up as he saw the headless bodies hanging from the balloons. Their severed heads were placed in their hands. It was a message. The question was, who were these people? Guardian Captain, another red-haired girl, slowly hovered toward Gaia with a black skull in her hand. "We found this in one of the bodies," the girl said, handing the black skull to Alicia. "Black skull. The symbol of the Dark Lord," Norvin muttered as he confirmed that this was done by the Dark Lord and not by someone else. After what he did to Ithelin and Thusians, Norvin knew there was no one stupid enough to mimic the Dark Lord's actions. Trying to copy him was equal to signing their death warrants. The Guardians had records of copycats for every mass murderer ever walked the world. However, the only one with no copycats was the Dark Lord. Besides, the cruelty and the fear in the severed head's eyes were a clear indication of who killed them. When did you find them? Alicia asked in a tone colder than her usual self. The guardians shuddered. This morning, answered the blonde-haired youngster. What were you doing until someone entered this area and placed them right under your noses? Asked Alicia. Norvin had the same question running in his mind. The only explanation he could come up with was incompetence. As Alicia said, someone from the Dark Lord's army entered one of the most protected areas, placed balloons with bodies, and escaped the area without anyone noticing. Just imagining the sequence of events frustrated Norvin. Ever since the Dark Lord destroyed Ithalin and settled down in the Dark Ocean, the Guardian Guild was desperately looking for a win against him. His power and influence grew with each passing day as the people's trust in the guild lowered. Now if the newspapers got a whiff of this, Norvin knew the people would be more afraid of the Dark Lord than they would trust the Guardian Guild. The Guardians gawked at each other and lowered their heads. They had no explanation. Initially, one of them thought the Dark Lord teleported the balloons with the bodies here, but later they realized the array formed an anti-teleportation area around. In other words, no one would be able to teleport in or out of the area. As Norvin turned his gaze to the black skull in Alicia's hands, he noticed something in the skull's mouth. He dropped down to Alicia's hand and pulled out a piece of paper from the skull's mouth. Everyone turned their gaze toward Norvin and waited for him to read what was written on the piece of paper. Better luck next time, clowns. It's nice array. Norvin crushed the paper, gritting his teeth. While reading the words, Norvin couldn't help imagining the Dark Lord laughing at them. When Alicia heard the Dark Lord calling them clowns, she almost crushed the skull in her hand to pieces. On the other hand, the Guardians hoped she wouldn't vent her anger on them. Suddenly, the black skull in Alicia's hands trembled, letting out a strange whistling noise. The Guardians almost leaped back, expecting the skull to explode. If you found out who they were and their buddies, they'd be alive. The Guardians felt a chill hearing the Dark Queen's voice coming from the skull. After hearing the Dark Queen's voice, the Guardians looked more terrified. Alicia had a feeling that the Dark Queen herself came here to put these balloons in the bodies. One thing was certain for Alicia, the Dark Lord didn't know who these people were, and he tortured them to no avail. This made Alicia more curious about their identities. Well, take this from here, Alicia turned her gaze back to the Guardians. Be more competent next time, Alicia snickered before taking the bodies and leaving the area. For some reason, Norvin had a feeling that if they could unveil the mystery behind the bodies' identities, they might be able to gain an advantage over the Dark Lord. The following day started with nothing too dramatic like the previous day for Michael. Since the Empress wanted to meet him again at the exact location they had met before, Michael woke up early and headed to the Lone Mountain. As he was flying in the sky, the orange and yellow bright ball began to appear like the colors oranges, lemons, and grapefruit. The sun slowly rose higher and higher as the colors became more vibrant. The sky and water connected with each other, and the light struck across the water. With each passing second, the sun began to glow brighter and brighter, eliminating the darkness of the night. The sunrise made the water glisten while the birds began to fly out of their nests peacefully. Michael had a sense of gentleness and calm as the birds chirped and the wind breezed over him. By the time Michael reached the mountain, he had noticed the Empress was waiting for him with Balladur. Michael didn't expect the Empress to arrive at the location earlier than they had agreed. You are early as well, Empress Nithrol greeted Michael with the most beautiful smile that shined just as bright as the morning sun. Good morning, Empress. Michael greeted back the Empress and landed beside her. Then, the two of them stared at the rising sun in silence for a few moments. Michael eventually broke the silence. I assume you heard what happened at the Han Torum shipyard, and I assume you know the ones who destroyed the place were not elves but the Guardians? As Michael expected, the Empress knew what really went down, unlike the dwarves. The moment Michael read the news stating that the shipyard in Embercrest had a mysterious explosion and the dwarves were suspecting the elves for the explosion. Many believed the news because everyone in the world knew the hatred between the dwarves and the elves. However, Michael knew it was all bullshit. Even if Michael didn't know it was Noah who destroyed the prototype, he wouldn't have suspected the elves because it was too obvious. Who would have thought Noah Winston, the Supreme Guardian, was capable of such trickery? Michael said with a tinge of sarcasm in his voice. You were supposed to deal with the prototype and the weapons, Balladur interjected as the Empress raised her hand, stopping Balladur from speaking further. Michael slightly turned his head to see Balladur standing behind Nithrol. In case you haven't noticed, I'm not working for you. I'm working with you. Huge difference. Ignore my unruly subordinate. Nithrol's eyes glistened with authority and fury. With a single glance, she made Balladur take a step back. Even Michael felt the overwhelming aura of a ruler around her. It's okay, Michael defused the situation. One or another, the weapon and the blueprints were dealt with. The one who built the weapon is with the Guardian now. So everything with the dwarves will go back to what it used to be, said Michael. The real brains behind the weapon and the prototype was a human. An orphan named Hammond. Nithrol gave Michael something important in his hunt for the inventor. As soon as Michael heard the name, the image of Nightmare's drawing flashed across his eyes. H for Hammond, Michael said to himself. Erase everything we know about Hammond. I hope you will find it useful. With a flick of her wrist, Nithrol took out an elegantly rolled parchment from her space ring. Take this if you think he is a threat to both of us. As you said, you are working with me, not for me. Nithrol extended the scroll toward Michael as he took it from her without wasting a second. As far as he was concerned, Hammond was more of a threat to him and his army than he was to Nithrol. Deal with him however you see fit. I just do not want to see his toys threatening my empire in any way. Although Nathroel seemed calm and collected, Michael could see the hidden killing intent in her eyes. If this Hammond guy was within her reach, Michael doubted he would still be alive. Don't worry about him anymore. I will deal with him personally, Michael said with a murderous grin. Chapter 860 Assassination of Ethan I. Previous chapter. Silvery white moonlight sprinkled on the ground as the blue sky was dotted with countless small stars. The chaste moon sails like a silvery boat in the deep blue sea. The night's aroma pervaded the air, woven into a soft net, covering all the scenery inside. The gauze-like clouds floated in the sky, which seemed to hide the ethereal fairyland of its own. The distant sky was connected with the world, forming a beautiful scene of heaven and earth. The black and blue sky was like a piece of paper, and the stars were like beautiful flowers, like a sparkling lamp, lying quietly in this black and blue. Under the dazzling night sky, the baby shower for the soon-to-be mom of the second child, Catherine, finally arrived. This was one of the days when the Winston Manor outshined the starry sky itself. The Winston Manor and the compound around it glittered brightly like a magical land. The hustle and bustle of chatter, cheers of celebration, the tantalizing smell of warm stew, fry meat and caramel desserts wafted the air. The Winston Manor emitted a golden glow. Inside the manor, the atmosphere was full of positive energy, love and laughter. Multiple games were being played, special meals were being made, and tons of gifts were being opened by the mother-to-be, Catherine Winston. Every aspect of the baby shower was baby-themed. The decorations were things such as pacifiers, rattles and bottles, and there was even a cake made in the shape of a baby in diapers. The cake was surrounded by cupcakes that had pacifiers on them, and every dessert was a lovely shade of blue because Catherine's favorite color was blue. Adorable baby books were being passed around and filled with positive notes and pieces of advice that experienced mothers felt would help prepare Catherine for when the baby came. Imelda was running around the main hall, supervising the works with Catherine's first baby in her arms. Catherine was the main star of the event as she sat on a throne forged and decorated by the finest blacksmiths in Elon, watching the joyous celebration before her. Her bloated belly was a symbol of love, happiness, and an upcoming blessing to her and the entire Winston family. As the lord of the family, Ethan spent no expense on the event. Every single aspect of the baby shower was led by the best of the best. This joyous event drew every Winston under the same roof, except for one. While the cooks were preparing the feast, Ethan and Diana were inside the rooms, preparing their own gifts for Catherine and Andrews. Diana combed her striking golden hair standing before the mirror. Ethan saw the despair hiding deep within Diana's eyes in the reflection. She was better than hiding her true emotions, but Ethan knew her better than anyone to see what was inside her heart. Did you make sure the arrays are in place and the guards are on alert? Diana asked. Her voice was far from relaxed and sounded serious as hell. For God's sake, Diane, I personally checked everything. Nothing bad is gonna happen today. Will you please relax? Ethan walked behind Diana and placed his hands on her shoulder. He gently squeezed, reassuring her that nothing would happen today. I don't know, Ethan. I have a bad feeling about this. Diana's brows arched up as she slowly turned around. Look, Diane. Ethan cupped Diana's face and looked her in the eyes. Rowena and Noah are here. No one can do any harm to our family when they are here. I thought you'd be more worried that he wouldn't be here with all of us as a family. Diana shook her head. It's better he isn't. The last time Catherine was pregnant, he threatened to kill her and the baby. Diana sighed. You know he didn't mean that, said Ethan. Of course I know he didn't mean it, but we cannot take his side without revealing the truth. I just hope one day we'll all celebrate something together as a family. Diana's voice stuttered because as far as she could tell, the chances of their happy family reunion were little to nothing. Still, Diana had hope and faith in a higher power. My lord, my lady, Samuel knocked on the door. Young Master Noah is home. Diana and Ethan felt a bit relieved and smiled when they heard Samuel. We'll be there in a minute, Ethan answered Samuel and sent him away. We should go, Diana nodded as she put a strand of hair hanging on her face behind her ear. The two of them left the room and headed to the main hall to join the rest of the family. Everyone in the hall turned their gazes toward the lord and lady of the family walking down the stairs together. They saw Sabrina, their youngest child, standing between Rowena and Noah. Looking at the three of them, Ethan and Diana imagined Michael standing behind them. Father, mother, the three of them bowed toward Diana and Ethan, showing their respect. After the three bowed, Andrews walked to Noah's side and greeted Diana and Ethan with an ear-to-ear grin. There you are. Imelda rushed to Diana's side with Andrew's boy in her hand. When she came to Diana's side, the boy reached out to Ethan. Kpa, the boy mumbled as Ethan took the chubby little boy in his arms. My little minion likes me so much, huh? Ethan said in a playful voice while rubbing the boy's cuddly belly. How was your trip to the treacherous ocean? Diana asked Noah. Couldn't find what I was looking for. But I heard someone has lifted the curse from the princess. Noah emphasized the word someone as though he knew exactly who lifted the curse. At least someone was there to help the princess, Diana said with a gentle smile. Then, she walked toward Catherine with her children following her behind. Rowena remained calm as ever, looking around the hall. On the other hand, Sabrina's thoughts drifted off to a distance. I hope the price for the help was worth it, said Noah. The moment Noah laid his eyes on King Porter and the Queen, he knew they had struck a deal with the Dark Lord to cure their daughter. To be honest, Noah didn't blame the king or take action against the king for colluding with the Dark Lord, even though Noah could have. He just hoped the price for curing their daughter was worth it. Saving one's child is always worth any price, Noah. You will know this when something happens to your own, said Diana. Where is Samuel? Rowena asked Diana after looking around the hall for their butler. He went to Ice Fair to get something for me, Imelda answered Rowena from behind. I won't let anything happen to our family, mother, said Noah. Without uttering a word, Diana bent down, grabbed a handful of sandal paste and smeared it on Catherine's cheeks. Praying for a safe and healthy delivery for both you and baby, Diana wished Catherine before walking out of the main hall to get some peace. Ever since she returned to her own self, Diana sought more privacy and some alone time. The crowd made her uneasy for some reason. As they exited the main hall, they stepped into Diana's garden. Except for a couple of guards, no one was in the garden as Diana ordered. The four of them peacefully strolled through the garden and settled around a stone table. You seem different, mother, Rowena said when Diana sat on the stone bench. So it wasn't just me who felt that way, Noah smiled. As they were gathered around the table, a couple of maids carried a silver platter with orange juice and placed the glasses on the table. Thank you, dear. Diana dismissed the maids as each picked up a glass to quench their thirst, except Sabrina. Something in your mind, Sabi? Diana asked, avoiding Rowena's remark about something different about her. Sabrina moved the glass back and forth without answering Diana. Sabrina, Rowena's voice made Sabrina snap back to reality. They all turned their gazes at Sabrina. Do you have something to tell us, Sabi? Asked Diana. Because Diana was busy tracking down people who tried to conspire against Noah and Michael behind their backs, she neglected her duties as a mother and the lady of the house. Thanks to Imelda, no one noticed Diana's absence and her neglect. The one who was affected more by her absence was Sabrina. Unlike Noah and Rowena, Sabrina spent most of her time cultivating in Winston Manor. Wherever she looked for Diana, she would be outside murdering people. But to the members of Winston Manor, Diana was meditating in her room. I had a bad dream last night. That's all, said Sabrina. What is the dream about? Noah asked Sabrina. Arh. Just as Sabrina was about to tell them about her dream, Imelda's scream resonated from the main hall. Noah immediately stood up, knocking out the glasses in the process. Diana's instinct kicked in as she moved with lightning speed to catch all the glasses before they could hit the ground and shatter into pieces. But Noah and Sabrina didn't notice this as they dashed into the main hall. Rowena, on the other hand, glanced at Diana for a moment before disappearing from the garden. In a blink of an eye, Rowena appeared in the main hall right beside Catherine. As soon as Noah stepped into the hall, his heart skipped a beat. Father! Sabrina screamed, looking at Ethan. He was on the ground, holding his gut as blood oozed through his hand. Everyone was stunned and speechless. Noah's body began to shiver as he sat beside his father and raised his head to place it on his lap. Then, with a flick of his wrist, Noah took out a healing potion. He poured the potion into Ethan's mouth without asking any questions. The sudden explosion of killing intent around Rowena made everyone in the hall collapse, including Catherine. Rowena's gaze swept across the hall to find whoever was responsible for her father's state and found a human-sized hole in the cake they bought for Catherine. Whoever stabbed Ethan was hiding inside the cake until he or she ambushed Ethan. Ethan, Rowena turned her gaze at Diana, who stammered toward Ethan and dropped to her knees before him. Her eyes turned red as tears rolled out. Father, Noah emptied the healing potion, but the wound did not close up as he desperately hoped. Diana's mouth dried as she saw green veins running through Ethan's neck like spider webs. It's not working. Noah clenched his fist as he took out another healing potion and tried to force it into Ethan's mouth. For the first time in his life, Noah couldn't think straight. His mind went completely blank seeing his father on the verge of death. He's cursed, Sabrina mumbled. Chapter 861 Assassination of Ethan 2 Previous chapter. A few moments ago, after Diana took the children outside to her garden, Ethan spent his time socializing with all the guests and giving his blessing to Catherine. Andrew's son was still in his arms and refused to leave. The little boy loved Ethan more than he loved his parents. Come on, Keith. Come to Papa. Andrews tried to take the boy away from Ethan as he noticed the royal carriage of King Porter parked outside. Soon, the sound of heavy boots and metal armor clanking grew louder and louder as King Porter entered the hall with his loyal soldiers leading the way. After the royal guards escorted Porter inside, they bowed and joined the royal guards of other nations, leaving their kings to socialize with the others. As soon as King Porter arrived at the hall, King Crawford Bredia, Catherine's father, welcomed his fellow king with a broad grin. The two of them embraced each other as a sign of respect and firmly shook each other's hands. I am so glad you could make it, Porter, King Bredia said, still keeping Porter's hand in his. It had been a year since Porter saw Bredia, who looked much younger and seeped with vigor. The reason for King Bredia's transformation was Andrews and Catherine. Although he was still the king of Bredia, Andrews and Catherine took care of most things. Under their rule, Kingdom Bredia prospered despite the monstrous growth of Bradford under the rule of the Sunrise sect. The fact that the Dark Lord hailed from the Sunrise sect and he loved Rivertown like it was his own made Bradford untouchable. Noah may have shut down the Majestic and Hades, which used to be the pillars of the economy in Bradford, yet Claire found new means of revenue through farming and trading. Like weed gets the water poured for the crop, Kingdom Bredia benefited from the trade routes Claire created. Even merchants from other continents visited Rivertown and Bradford to trade and exchange gifts with the most powerful sect in the Elon continent. How is Princess Chanel? King Bredia asked Porter. She is doing perfectly fine, thanks to the gods, said Porter and quickly turned his gaze toward Ethan to avoid further questions regarding Chanel and her curse. King Porter was standing in the Holy Maiden and Supreme Guardian's home, and the last thing he wanted to talk about was something related to the Dark Lord. Lord Ethan, Porter greeted Ethan. The little one. Porter couldn't help pinching baby Keith's chubby cheeks. King Porter, didn't we tell you to come with your family? Where is Queen Clarice and Princess Chanel? Asked Ethan. I know, Lord Ethan. But Clarice had taken Chanel to her father's home. Chanel is still not ready to venture outside the kingdom. I understand. Ethan patted Porter on the shoulder. As they were conversing, some of the representatives of royal land arrived at the baby shower and showered Catherine with lavish gifts. Even the Holy Church sent people to attend the event just to curry favor with the Holy Maiden and the Supreme Guardian. Almost every single noble family in the Elon continent attended the event regardless of their busy schedules. Since Diana was not the best when it came to socializing, Ethan met and greeted each and every guest while keeping Keith from crying out loud. While Ethan was attending to the guests, Natalia Winston went outside to receive the cake they had ordered from the Beast Kingdom in our continent. The Beastmen had some of the best cooks in the entire world, including 3 6-star chefs. Ethan had to call several favors to get this special cake from the Beastmen Kingdom. The cake was taller than Natalia herself and covered with a special box made of thin planks. Take this inside. Natalia ordered the Winston Manor guards to take the cake inside. The guards rolled the box as gently as they could. At that moment, everyone thought the box contained a human-sized cake resembling Catherine. Finally, Ethan heaved a sigh of relief when he saw the golden wooden box. The moment the guards brought the cake inside, its fresh aroma and sweetness made everyone salivate for a piece. As Ethan vowed to himself, he brought nothing but the best to the baby shower. "Keep it close to Catherine," said Imelda. One by one, the guests who had newly arrived went to Catherine and smeared sandal paste on her face. The hall brimmed with joy and positive energy as Ethan forgot all of his problems and celebrated the baby shower with everyone else. Imelda smiled, looking at Ethan, laughing and joking around as he was used to before he learned everything about Diana's second son. Imelda wished they could stay like this forever. Although she was not cruel enough to say Dean didn't deserve a loving family, she didn't think the Dark Lord could have a happy ending after everything he had done. When Imelda went to the doorway to the garden, she saw Diana talking to her children. Imelda gawked at them for a moment and decided not to approach them. By the time she returned to Catherine's side, the soon-to-be mother tucked Imelda's sleeves. Catherine motioned Imelda to give her ears. "Can I get something to eat?" Catherine whispered into Imelda's ears. "Just wait for a few minutes, darling." Imelda gently kissed Catherine on top of her head. She looked around, noticing a few new faces approaching Catherine to give their blessings. Eventually, when everyone in the hall had done their part, Imelda gestured at the guards to open the box containing the cake. "Everyone please gather around. We are going to cut the cake now." Imelda's voice swept across the hall, silencing the crowd. "Go and bring Diana and the others," Ethan ordered one of the maids before strolling toward Imelda. Keith played with Ethan's ears, trying to chew them. All the kings, nobles and elders of various sects gathered around Catherine as Imelda waited for Diana to arrive. "They will be here. Go on, open the box," Andrews said. Then Imelda twisted the knob attached to the side of the box and watched the box sling open. A dim light appeared in the box, along with the sound of a baby's cry, before the wooden box crumbled into tiny pieces, revealing the cake inside. Catherine and the others were stunned to see the cake that looked exactly like Catherine. The Beastmen chefs poured their hearts and souls into the cake as they etched every single detail about Catherine into the cake. If it wasn't for the golden icing and cherries on top of the cake, one would have mistaken the cake for the real Catherine. "Here you go." Imelda picked up a knife with a golden bow tied around it and handed it over to Catherine. "Carve out a nice piece of yourself," the crowd chuckled, hearing Imelda's words. Catherine gawked around for a moment, searching for Diana and her children. "Where are they?" Ethan mumbled. He was about to step aside from the crowd when he saw the cake trembling. As a former adventurer, Ethan developed an ability to sense an imminent threat. For some reason, his instincts screamed at him as he pushed Catherine away from the cake. To everyone's shock, a black hand punched through the cake from within and tried to stab Ethan. Ethan immediately grabbed the hand, twisting it. "Arg!" Ethan heard a muffled groan. He put in enough strength to break the wrist, but the assassin ignored the pain as he dashed out of the cake, destroying it completely in the process. The assassin raised his other hand as an evil-looking dagger oozing dark red smoke appeared in his hand. He brought down the dagger at Ethan. Everything happened in a blink of an eye. Except for Ethan, no one reacted in time and called for the guards. They were too startled. Meanwhile, Ethan moved his body to the side, evading the dagger by an inch. He kicked the assassin in the chest to put some distance between them. Baby Keith was terrified of the dark-robed assassin and began to cry. Every fiber in Ethan's body prioritized keeping Keith safe over everything, including his own life. The assassin was extremely agile and noble. He leaped into the air and cast a spell as a bright light flashed across the room, blinding everyone. Ethan closed his eyes but covered Keith with both his hands and held him closer to his chest. Suddenly, Ethan felt a sharp pain in his stomach. Despite the excruciating pain, Ethan didn't let go of Keith. The assassin stabbed Ethan a couple of times until Ethan managed to grab the assassin's wrist and twist it. The dagger slipped off the assassin's hand as Ethan stomped the ground with enough force to make the dagger bounce up. Before the assassin could react, Ethan grabbed the dagger in one hand and stabbed the assassin in the shoulder. Ethan heard the assassin groan as the bright flash finally faded away. Imelda screamed when she snapped back to reality and saw Ethan collapse down to the ground. So much blood gushed out of Ethan's stomach, turning the floor beneath him wet and red. The assassin was nowhere to be found. When the guards rushed to Ethan's side, it was too late. "Keith!" Andrews and Catherine screamed out loud as Andrews plucked Keith from the ground and held him closer to his chest. Seeing Keith safe in Andrews' arms, Ethan heaved a sigh of relief. "Search the area." King Breedia roared as he dashed toward Catherine. The Winston Manor guards immediately surrounded the family while the royal guards rushed to their master's side. Ethan tried to speak, yet no words escaped his mouth. The pain was too much to bear as it felt like he was being eaten from the inside. He could feel his life force slowly leaving his body. Every breath he took made the pain worse. When he was in pain and realized he was dying, he only saw one thing before his eyes: his family. Dian. Ethan mumbled. If he was about to die, he wanted to see Diana one last time before he closed his eyes. Father. Sabrina pushed through the crowd and shouted when she saw Ethan. This was the dream she had last night. She saw her father die in her arms as she watched the light of life, leaving Ethan's eyes helplessly in her dream. Chapter 862. Assassination of Ethan 3. Noah sent all the nobles out, and to be honest, they didn't want to stick around any more than Noah wanted them to. Diana's body just froze as her mind went completely blank. The killing intent radiated from Diana surprised everyone. However, saving Ethan took priority over Diana's murderous aura. Sabrina squeezed Ethan's hands as tears rainbows down from her eyes. Father, Sabrina sobbed. On the other hand, Noah emptied the third bottle of healing potion into Ethan's mouth. King Porter and King Bredia couldn't help shivering. Considering their close relationship with the Winston family, they didn't leave as the others. The previously joyful atmosphere took a dark turn in a blink of an eye. The cake the assassin was hiding inside turned into a squishy mess. Everyone in the Winston family sat around Ethan and sobbed, praying for the gods to help Ethan. Most of them were still in shock at what just had transpired. Move. After seeing the healing potion have no effect on Ethan, Rowena placed her hand on Ethan's stab wound. Among everyone in the hall, Rowena remained the calmest. Contrary to how she looked, Rowena burned with intense rage inside. She knew saving her father's life was more important than finding the assassin at that moment. Since the healing potion couldn't close the wound, Rowena summoned frost energy as a thick layer of ice started to cover the wound slowly. The ice on the wound stopped the bleeding and somewhat lessened Ethan's pain. "Why did you tell us he was cursed?" asked Rowena. This was the first time Rowena's hands trembled without her control. Her slender hands were drenched in Ethan's blood. No matter how hard she tried, she couldn't cancel out the sobbing sounds. "Do something," Sabrina stuttered, looking at Noah and Rowena. If someone could save her father, it was one of her siblings. "Ethan." Diana sat beside Ethan's head and remained without uttering a word. Looking at Diana like this freaked the crap out of Imelda. "I saw father dying of curse in my dream. I didn't know how to tell you. I should have told everyone. It's my fault." Tears gushed out of Sabrina's eyes and rained down upon Ethan's chest. "Andrew." Before Noah answered Sabrina, he turned his gaze toward Andrews. "Take your family and go to the shelter," Noah ordered Andrews. The Winston Manor had a secure vault built underground for the family members to seek shelter in case of natural disasters or wars. Only the core members of Winston's family knew how to access the shelter, and Andrews was one of them. "No dash." Andrews refused to leave Ethan's side but was cut short by Rowena. "Go," Rowena interjected. Her cold, murderous voice shook Andrews to the core. After hearing her, his legs automatically moved upstairs. Imelda saw Natalia trying to approach Diana, but she quickly stopped her little sister by her arms and sent her with Andrews. "I cannot leave him." Natalia shook her head. "This is not the time to argue, Natalia. Go with Andrews and stay there until I say otherwise." "Please," Imelda begged, tears running down her face. As much as Natalia wanted to stay with her big sisters, she knew there was nothing she could do to help Ethan. All she could do was pray to the gods for Ethan. "Uncle." Natalia and Imelda froze when they heard little Keith's first word out of his mouth. They all expected Keith's first word to be either mom or dad. But it was uncle instead of what the others expected. Little Keith proved that he loved Ethan as much as he loved Andrews and Catherine or more. What should have been a joyous occasion turned out to be such a miserable situation. No one could laugh or celebrate Keith's first word. Instead, Imelda and Natalia led Andrews and Catherine outside the main hall under the protection of Winston Manor guards. "We need to take him to my palace," Rowena said. "Let's go." Noah stood up, lifting Ethan in his arms. Diana stood up like a lifeless zombie and followed Noah behind. They headed for Rowena's room, where Rowena had a personal teleportation array to reach her flying castle. But when Noah was about to take a step outside the hall, Ethan's body shook as he began to cough of dark blood, almost the color of pitch black. "What's happening?" Porter Forbes asked as Noah halted his steps. "The curse is not letting him out of this hall," Diana spoke without any emotion. She sounded like a dead person. Just as she said, when Noah tried to step outside the hall, Ethan coughed up more blood. Noah immediately stepped away from the entrance as he didn't dare to play with his father's life. The green veins running through Ethan's neck reached his jaws. If not for the frost hindering the curse, the poisonous curse would have reached Ethan's head and ended his life. "We can't leave this hall," Noah said to Rowena through the lump formed in his throat. Every word took an effort to come out of his mouth. The sadness and anger rendered Noah's brain useless. He looked for his big sister's guidance. For a moment, Rowena closed her eyes as the others saw a strange light appear from her forehead and form a light beam. The light beam radiated a whistling noise and glowed bright enough to blind everyone. When Rowena opened her eyes, the light beam lost its glow as Bai Ning stepped out of the beam. The moment Bai Ning laid her eyes on Rowena, she was stunned by the scene before her. The air that should have smelled of freshly baked cake and sandal paste reeked of blood and evil energy. "Cure him," Rowena ordered Bai Ning. The old woman limped toward Ethan with her hunched back and cane in her hand. "What happened here, holy maiden?" Bai Ning's words sounded calm despite the bloody body of Ethan in Noah's arms. "Lift the curse first," Rowena coldly said instead of narrating the events that led to the current situation. To be honest, she had no idea what had happened while they were outside. If she was inside, she would have torn apart the assassin before he could have raised a finger against her father. Bai Ning unfettered no word as she placed her hand on Ethan's chest. As soon as Bai Ning touched Ethan, she felt a bolt of lightning running down her spine. The backlash almost knocked Bai Ning down to the ground. Noah saw the sweat beads forming on the old woman's face as she gritted her teeth as though she was enduring intense pain. While Bai Ning was trying to lift the curse, Rowena continued to apply frost on Ethan's face to prevent the blood from gushing out. She had to keep the blood loss in control until Bai Ning lifted the curse. "This curse is nothing like I've ever seen," Bai Ning mumbled. Her words snuffed out the little bit of hope Sabrina had for her father. Recently, everything she dreamed about began to happen in real life. The only person she shared this with was Ethan. However, he asked her to ignore and pay no mind to this phenomenon because Ethan didn't want Sabrina to become a freak of nature like her siblings. Instead, he wished Sabrina to have a normal life away from all the wars and hostility. Normal life may be just a wishful dream for her siblings, unlike Sabrina. However, Sabrina had started to develop powers that were beyond any mortal comprehension and joined her siblings as another freak of nature. If the word of her power to foresee the future escaped, the Sky Hall would swoop up Sabrina in the name of the greater good. They would groom Sabrina to be the next holy maiden after Rowena. Arg! Suddenly, a grayish mist shot out of Ethan's body and blasted Bai Ning away. The old woman flung in the air and hit the wall pretty hard before falling down. The ground beneath Noah cracked when he resisted the force that blasted away Bai Ning. When the old woman got back to her feet, her face looked pale like paper. "The curse," Rowena growled with intense killing intent in her eyes. The temperature in the room dropped by several degrees to the point everyone began to see their own breath in the air. Bai Ning shivered to even look Rowena in the eyes. However, the curse she felt terrified Bai Ning more than Rowena. One thing for certain, the curse radiated an energy that didn't belong to the mortal world. It was a miracle Ethan was able to resist the curse to this point. She even doubted whether Ethan was a mere mortal or someone special like Diana and her children, except Sabrina. I. Bai Ning stuttered. "Speak before I lose my patience." Rowena's thunderous voice swept across the hall, pushing the old woman several steps back. "The curse cannot be lifted, holy maiden. I am sorry." As soon as Sabrina heard Bai Ning's words, she collapsed to the ground. A tear rolled out of King Bridia's eyes and Porter stood beside Bridia with his eyes glimmering with fear. When Chanel was cursed, more than one healer told him the same, but at the end, the Dark Lord was able to lift the cure in a few mere moments. So Porter knew there was still a chance that the Dark Lord would be able to do the same to Ethan. However, he didn't dare to utter the name of the Dark Lord in front of the Holy Maiden and the Supreme Guardian who vowed to take down the Dark Lord. Finally, the tears caged within Rowena's eyes escaped and trickled down on her rosy cheeks. For the first time in her life, Rowena shed tears, and when Noah saw the scene, his heart shattered into pieces. "It's okay," Ethan mumbled, shocking everyone around him. He slowly opened his eyes and looked at Diana. He tried to smile through the pain. "Father, Ethan," Noah gently placed Ethan on the floor as Diana grabbed both Ethan's hands. "I'm not going to let you die. You hear me? You're gonna be all right," Diana said. Ethan tried to speak, but he couldn't even open his mouth. While Ethan was struggling in pain, Diana bent down and kissed him on the forehead. Then she turned her gaze toward Noah. "You know who to summon. Do it." Diana's voice completely changed from caring mother to a domineering warrior. "Rowena, if anyone has a problem with it, deal with them," Diana ordered Rowena as she nodded without asking her mother a question. Chapter 863. Noah meets Azazel. Noah gawked between his father and King Porter. When King Porter noticed Noah's gaze on him, his heart skipped a beat. King Bredia and Bai Ning frowned as Noah made his way to King Porter. Every fiber in Noah's body told him to find another way to cure his father. If he had enough time, he might come up with a way to lift the curse. But without the time and his mentor, who entered into a slumber, Noah couldn't come up with a way to save his father. Ever since he was a little kid, Ethan gave everything to Noah. His father was more of a best friend to him than a father. Noah couldn't even imagine a world without his father. Moreover, he knew his mother would break into pieces if he let Ethan die. If making a deal with the Dark Lord was the only way to save his father, Noah was willing to do it. His father's life was worth more than his principles. Your Majesty, Noah's voice broke as he looked King Porter in the eyes. I know what you did to save Princess Chanel. King Porter trembled, hearing the words coming out of Noah's mouth. I don't know what you're talking about, Noah, King Porter stuttered. It's not the time to cover up, Your Majesty. Noah slowly shook his head. I wouldn't ask you if I had the time to go to the Dark Ocean and meet him myself. But we don't have much time. So please summon him, Noah pleaded with King Porter. When King Porter asked for help with the curse on Princess Chanel, Noah felt how powerful the curse was and went to the treacherous ocean, one of the most dangerous places in the world, to help her without worrying about his life. Although Noah returned empty-handed, King Porter wholeheartedly felt grateful toward Noah. No one would have ventured into the treacherous ocean to help the princess. Rowena didn't know what had happened with Princess Chanel. The only thing she knew was that King Porter might have something to help her father. However, Rowena didn't like to see her little brother begging for a measly king. She was on the verge of freezing King Porter to the neck and forcing him to reveal whatever Noah wanted him to. King Porter, King Bredia opened his mouth. If you have something to help Ethan, please give what Noah wants. You know Ethan would do it in a heartbeat, King Bredia said. He was oblivious to the fact that Noah wanted to summon the Dark Lord. Otherwise, King Bredia would have never spoken these words. He still had nightmares of the time Ghost ambushed the engagement gala and threatened to kill Catherine and the baby inside her. If you want me to beg no. When Noah tried to lower his head, King Porter grabbed his shoulder and shook his head. Once everyone said Princess Chanel couldn't be cured, King Porter felt weak and helpless despite his status as a king. Being a king didn't matter when he couldn't be a good father and save his daughter. At that time, King Porter would have given anything to have a tiny bit of hope to save Chanel, and Noah was the only man who gave him that hope. As long as he lived, Porter couldn't forget the sliver of hope Noah gave him. To be honest, King Porter didn't think he could forgive himself if he stood there and did nothing to help Noah. As a righteous king and a grateful man, he had to give the card the Dark Lord gave him. He just hoped the Dark Lord would accept the summon from the Supreme Guardian. He gave me this if I want to contact him again, King Porter said after taking a long deep breath. Then he took out the black card with a skull embossed in from his space ring. The moment King Bredia saw the skull, his body shivered. He took a few steps back and almost tripped down on his robes. Pure fear and shock overwhelmed Bredia's senses as he began to see images of piles of bodies on the engagement gala before his eyes. The Dark Lord, who was known as Ghost, then single-handedly slaughtered almost every royal guard and beat him to a pulp on his own throne. I don't know how to summon him. Maybe you can figure it out. Ignoring King Bredia's tantrum, Porter handed over the card to Noah. Noah's hands shivered as he took the card from Porter's hand. Never in a million years, Noah thought, asking the Dark Lord for his help. But he didn't have a choice, as the Dark Lord may be the only person who could lift the curse and save his father. Noah! The entire hall trembled as Bai Ning's shout swept across the area. The old woman dashed at Noah in a blink of an eye and snatched the card from his hand. How dare you think of summoning that evil creature? Bai Ning's blood boiled, thinking Noah was trying to summon the Dark Lord in front of her and the Holy Maiden. Ethan's life meant nothing compared to striking a deal with the Dark Lord. The mere thought of Noah considering asking the Dark Lord's help made Bai Ning's anger explode like a raging volcano. She wanted to strike down Noah and King Porter for colluding with the Dark Lord where they were standing. But first, Bai Ning wanted to destroy the card left behind by the Dark Lord. No! Sabrina shouted as Bai Ning clenched her fist to crush the card to pieces. Just as Bai Ning was about to crush the black card, a wave of bone-chilling frost blasted Bai Ning onto the wall behind her. The old woman collided with the wall and coughed up blood. Before her body could hit the ground, a stream of ice shot out of Rowena's blades and froze the old woman up to her neck. Noah quickly raised his hand as the card on the ground flew back into his hand. Holy Maiden! Bai Ning could neither raise her voice nor a finger against Rowena. In a blink of an eye, Rowena disappeared from Ethan's side and appeared before Bai Ning. "You cannot let this happen," Bai Ning stuttered. "If you breathe a word about any of this," Rowena's voice was cold and sharp as a dagger that pierced into Bai Ning's heart, "I will freeze your body to the core and toss you into the deepest pits of hell." Fear took over Bai Ning's mind and prevented her from opening her mouth. The murderous intent she saw in Rowena's eyes was not a joke. Bai Ning's immortal stage cultivation wouldn't save her from the holy maiden's wrath. At the end of the day, Diana was not the only one with an ancient god's blood. After Bai Ning heard Rowena's threat, she closed her mouth. "Summon him," Diana said to Noah, who held the card in his hand. "Noah, stop." King Breedia rushed to Noah's side. "Don't do this, Noah. You are the supreme guardian. What would the world think if they knew you asked for the Dark Lord's help? What would your teacher say? Will he approve of this?" King Breedia fired questions one after another. The Dark Lord was the last person he wanted under the same roof as his daughter and grandson. What if the Dark Lord decided to kill them all? What if he wanted to take his grandson away? What if he hadn't forgotten what he did and decided to seek revenge? So many questions wreaked havoc inside Breedia's mind. "I don't care about anything. If seeking his help will save Father's life, that's what I would do," Noah said, slowly shaking his head. When Breedia tried to stop Noah, Rowena just turned her cold gaze toward him as he felt a cold chill running down his spine. Breedia took a step back in utter fear and stood in the corner, watching Noah summon the Dark Lord helplessly. Holding the card in his hand, Noah took a deep breath. He looked around the black card to figure out the way to contact the Dark Lord until he felt a strange tingling in his hand. He felt like the card was asking for a sliver of arch energy, and that's what exactly Noah did. He slowly injected the card with arch energy. For a moment the card remained dormant and then it trembled. Black smoke slowly rose from the skull as the card floated above Noah's hand. Everyone turned their gazes at the card floating in midair. The black smoke permeating from the card slowly formed a mirror before them. As they were looking into the mirror, a man with wings sticking out of his back appeared. His eyes glowed like rubies. The man was dressed like a butler, with his hair neatly combed to the side and wearing black gloves. When he saw Noah, a strange smile formed on his handsome face instead of shock. "Supreme Guardian Noah. What a pleasant surprise. It's my pleasure to meet you at last." The butler's voice sounded crisp and clear as he lowered his head. But his bow indicated amusement instead of respect. Even though Noah didn't see the man in person, he could feel the overwhelming power radiating from him. According to Noah's spies, the Dark Lord had a personal butler. They described him as the butler with demon wings. Judging by the look of the man before him, Noah realized he must be the butler they informed him about. "I need to speak with Ghost," Noah bluntly said. "I can see King Porter Forbes behind you." King Porter's mouth dried in fear as he saw the butler smiling at him. Rowena and Diana came to Noah's side and stood behind him. "You must be the Holy Maiden and Lady Diana Winston." "I am honored to meet you, my ladies." The butler bowed slightly as Rowena creased her brows. "Call your master demon," Rowena coldly said. The demon smiled, slightly surprised to see Rowena identifies his race accurately. Besides, she didn't seem shocked to see a demon in person, unlike Bai Ning who had sweat beads forming on her forehead. "Forgive me for being blunt, my lady. But how do you expect the Dark Lord to answer your call when the clans you are in have sworn to kill him?" The demon butler asked Rowena. "I saved his life once. It's time he settles that debt," said Rowena. Chapter 864. Plan to destroy Noah's image. Azazel was surprised by Rowena's words and took a few moments to formulate a fitting response. He knew they must be in some blunder if they chose to contact the Dark Lord. Hence, Azazel wanted to gauge how desperate they were before informing the Dark Lord. "And the Dark Lord will settle the debt in time. Unfortunately for you, Holy Maiden, he doesn't work for the Sky Hall." Rowena took a step forward and stood beside Noah. Her eyes glistened with cold murderous intent. "I give you 5 seconds to call Ghost," Rowena snarled as Azazel let out an amused smile. "And what would happen when your countdown reaches 6? Asked Azazel. "Nothing. But soon you will see me in the dark ocean, bringing the entire might of Sky Hall to your doorstep. Your head will be the first one to roll down. Is threatening us the best way to ask for help, Holy Maiden?" Another voice appeared as they saw Azazel turn around and bow. The next moment, Noah and the others saw Gaia, the Dark Queen, stand before them in her dark suit of armor. "Azazel, we always settle our debt." Gaia looked over her shoulder and said to Azazel. Then she turned her gaze back to Rowena and Noah. You must be in some pretty desperate situation to ask for our help. Let's just say your clans have nothing to do with us. Why would we help you? What's in it for us? Gaia rubbed her chin. You said it yourself, you always settle your debt. My sister saved Ghost's life, and it's time he returns the favor, said Noah. Forgive me for thinking this might be an elaborate trap to capture the Dark Lord, Noah. Your pretty wife tried that and it didn't turn out well, did it? Now explain to me why I shouldn't think that way? Because Ethan is dying. Diana stepped forward and answered Gaia instead of Rowena or Noah. When Gaia heard Diana, her brows slightly arched up in surprise. She slowly waved her hand as the floating card turned a bit toward Ethan. He will be there. Gaia's words completely taken aback Noah and Rowena by surprise. They expected to negotiate or at least threaten her, but she glanced at Ethan for a moment and agreed to help them. Thank you, Diana said as tears trickled down her eyes. I hope for your sake you and your teacher don't play with your father's life. After Gaia spoke these words, her figure vanished into thin air. The card fell down to the ground as they all stared at the place where Gaia was for a few seconds without batting an eye. My lady, Gaia turned around to see Azazel. The demon butler was just as confused and surprised as Noah. Forgive me for questioning you, my lady. But why did you agree to help them? Asked Azazel. Did you see their faces? They are desperate. Gaia's face lit up. Imagine the world knowing that Noah, the Supreme Guardian, needed the Dark Lord's help. People who support Noah would go nuts when they realize he struck a deal with the Dark Lord to save his father. Plus, when Skyhall hears the Holy Maiden allowed the Dark Lord into her own home, we can expect some very big backslashes from her elders. Gaia devilishly chuckled. Whoever tried to kill Ethan has done us a huge favor. Inform Nadia Hall about this. Tomorrow morning, I want to see the headline The Supreme Guardian struck a deal with the Dark Lord to save his family. He went for our weapons and I am going straight for his credibility. I want to see that bastard's face when he realizes we completely fucked up his loyal base. Gaia couldn't keep her excitement bottled. If Azazel wasn't there, she would have bounced up and down, celebrating Noah's desperate situation. Has he returned from his little trip? Gaia asked Azazel. Yes, my lady. He is currently meditating in the garden. He'll go meet him then, said Gaia. Eventually, Gaia reached the Sword Hilt mountaintop and saw Michael meditating with his eyes closed. Nightmare was peacefully sleeping behind him, cuddling Vidora. By the time Gaia reached Michael, the sky had rumbled in the distance as she sensed the upcoming heavy storm. Despite the weather, Michael remained calm and completely focused on keeping his mind empty. What surprised Gaia was the dark swords. They stood on each side like guards while radiating crimson-red lightning bolts. She could feel the electricity in the air around him. Human, Gaia called Michael in a husky voice as his eyelids moved slightly. It took Michael a few seconds to slowly open his eyes. You are not gonna believe what just happened, said Gaia. Michael saw her eyes glowing with excitement and became curious. Give me a second. Michael stood up as the dark slowly flew into his sheath. He then proceeded to brush off the dust from his black coat and adjusted his sleeves. I just talked to Noah Winston. As soon as Gaia said these words, Michael was taken aback by surprise. His brows arched up. For a moment, his mind couldn't apprehend her words. Without keeping Michael in the dark, Gaia told him everything. Michael didn't even bat an eye hearing the story. Michael walked to the mountain's edge and glanced at the stormy dark ocean before him. Ethan was one of the few people who helped us without an ulterior motive, Michael said, remembering all his conversations with Ethan. He couldn't help thinking of Diana either. For some reason he felt a strange connection with Diana and Ethan. Besides, Rowena did save his life when the Blood Prince almost punched him to death. So he naturally felt indebted to Rowena, and he hated the feeling of being indebted to someone else. That was the reason why Michael always avoided taking loans from the system. Although Noah was his arch-nemesis, his conscience didn't allow him to ignore Noah's plea for help. Michael knew how hard it must have been for Noah to seek his help out of all people. Furthermore, Ethan and Diana always treated him well, like he was one of their own. Plus, this was a great opportunity to gain thousands of badass points as well as ruin Noah's image among the people. After taking a few long moments to gauge the plus and minuses of visiting Noah's home, Michael finally agreed to help him. Nightmare. Michael looked over his shoulder and called out his dragon. Nightmare opened his eyes and slowly rose up to his feet without waking up Vidora. Since Nightmare was in his true form, he cast a large shadow on the ground, which trembled as he walked toward Michael. We're going to Penn Town, buddy, Michael said, rubbing Nightmare's warm chin. I am coming with you, Gaia firmly said. Keep your eyes open when we reach there. I have a feeling this assassination attempt has something more to it, said Michael. As much as Michael loved causing trouble for Noah, he didn't wish his parents to die. Michael would never wish someone to be an orphan as he knew what that life would be like. Part of him blamed Noah for failing to protect his parents and loving family. Every time one of Noah's family got themselves into trouble, he had to save them. If anything, Noah should feel grateful toward him. Meanwhile, Noah's team of elites rushed to his home as soon as they heard what just happened during the baby shower. The word of the assassination attempt on Ethan's life spread through the kingdom like wildfire. Supreme Guardian. Neela entered the hall with the others. We are already sweeping the kingdom as we speak for the assassin. We will find him, said Neela. She clenched her fist, seeing all the blood on Noah's pure white robes and on the ground. Rowena completely ignored the guardians and sat beside Ethan, keeping the wound closed with the ice. Sabrina sat next to Rowena and held Ethan's hand as tight as she could. On the other hand, Diana remained without shedding a drop of tears. She firmly believed the Dark Lord could save Ethan's life. Diana's mind imagined new ways of killing the assassin and whoever sent him. After taking care of Ethan, tracking down the assassin would be her top priority. Even if the assassin ran to the edge of the world, she would find him and show him what would happen if someone dared to touch her family. You guys secure the parameters and keep everyone away from Ghost? Neela and the others creased their brows as they couldn't believe what they had just heard. Did you say Ghost, Supreme Guardian? Asked Neela. He is the only one who could lift the curse put on my father, said Noah. After Neela and the others heard Noah, their minds went blank. As a result, complete silence swept across the hall until Neela opened her mouth. You cannot do this, Supreme Guardian. There must be another way, said Neela. What if this is all his plan? How can you know he wasn't the one who sent the assassin? Asked Neela. To their surprise, it was Diana who answered Neela, not Noah. He didn't, Diana simply said as everyone turned their gazes toward her. My lady Diana raised her hand, abruptly cutting Neela's words short. If he wanted Ethan dead, he would be 6 feet down on the ground by now, Diana said without bothering to hide her killing intent. The murderous rage in Diana's eyes startled Rowena as she had never seen her mother like that. Granted, Ethan was just stabbed, and her mother was not in her usual self, but still, the murderous aura Rowena felt around Diana completely surprised her. In Rowena's eyes, Diana seemed like a new person. Find the assassin and figure it out. If you find him first, he will be alive. Diana openly issued a threat, giving no shit about the Guardians. The one before them at that moment was not Diana but Harriet Hunt. Just a glimpse of her former self freaked the hell out everyone, including Noah and Rowena. I will face the consequences of my actions later. For now, this is my order. Go and secure the area and do not make any moves on the Dark Lord, Noah ordered his team. Chapter 865. The Dark Lord is in Noah's home under the starlight and silvery moon. The shadows of the trees danced upon the Winston Manor. The leaves flickered like candlelight, creating a new picture from moment to moment. Amid the perfume of the summer blooms, feeling the cool of the evening wash over the Pentown as the waves kiss sun-warmed sand, the green-colored atmosphere was getting mixed with cloudy light. Little showers of rain were blowing down on the manor as the soldiers and the guardians patrolled the area vigilantly. They were all informed about Noah's decision to summon the Dark Lord. Hence, the soldiers looked pale and gawked at the sky, expecting the Dark Lord to arrive anytime. The sun slowly disappeared from the horizon, paving the way for the darkness to conquer the land. When the stars peeked through the night sky and the silvery moon bathed the land with its dazzling light, the nobles who left the manor returned. This time they stayed in the air, keeping their distance from the Winston Manor. Many were still on their way to the Winston Manor, and Zanali was one of them. Since she was a guardian and lover of Noah, she was granted permission to descend down within the main gates. Guardian Captain, Alvaro, the Dark Lord's inside man, greeted Zanali with a bow. Where is the Supreme Guardian? Asked Zanali as she rushed into the home. Inside, Alvaro didn't even finish his words as Zanali entered the hall, leaving him behind. Unlike the rest of his team, Alvaro chose not to stay inside. Ever since he started to work for the Dark Lord, he felt uneasy looking Noah in the eyes. To keep his nerves in check and remain calm, Alvaro patrolled the manor alone. His hands shivered, thinking about the Dark Lord and the Supreme Guardian under the same roof. Deep down he couldn't wait to see them slaughter each other, and that way he would be a free man once again. Recently he was ordered to learn where Noah keeps the inventor they rescued from the dwarves. Apparently, Noah didn't trust his elites enough to reveal the inventor's location. Except for Noah himself, no one in the guild knew about the location. Like it or not, Alvaro had to find the location and give this information to the vampire handler, or they would send the feed of Alvaro forcing himself on a woman to Noah directly. If that happened, it would not only destroy his career as a guardian but also get him thrown into the dungeon. So he had to choose between serving the Dark Lord or spending his life in a dark prison cell. I have to work on Neela, Alvaro mumbled under his breath. Among all the elites, Noah trusted Neela the most. Thus, Alvaro planned to gain Neela's trust and make her learn the inventor's location. He would be able to get the information from Neela once she has it. While Alvaro was formulating a plan to learn Hammond's location, Zanali reached Noah and tried to talk him out of his plan to call the Dark Lord for his aid. Nothing you say will make me change my mind, Zanali. I have no choice. Noah and Zanali stood in one corner and conversed in a husky voice. I know how much your father means to you. Do you? If you know, you won't try to talk me out of this. Listen to me, Zanali. I don't like this any more than you do. Every fiber in my body tells me not to call him, but I have no choice. I have to do this for my family. I cannot lose him, said Noah. Zanali clenched her fist. She knew Noah was right but couldn't let him ask for the Dark Lord's help, who brutally murdered her best friend, Peyton. Look at her. Noah turned his head looking at his mother. She's not even crying. I don't think she will ever overcome father's death. If I lose him, I will lose her too. Without them there is no Winston family, Noah's voice stuttered. Seeing him like this made Zanali forget all her hatred toward the Dark Lord for a moment and agree with Noah's decision. She knew Noah was right. Even the Sky Hall elder failed to lift the curse. So if anyone could help Noah, it was the Dark Lord himself. However, Zanali was afraid of the consequences of seeking his aid. Whatever happens, I will be at your side. Zanali took Noah's hands in her and gently squeezed them. I just wish Lord Andreas was here, said Zanali as Noah nodded. Me too. Lately we have had too many arguments and I didn't leave him to his slumber on good terms, Noah sighed. Then, his gaze swept across the hall until he locked his eyes on the cake. I should have been more careful. How could I let this happen? Don't blame yourself, Noah. Don't do that now. As much as I hate that murdering son of a bitch, he might be the only person who could lift the curse and save your father. He did heal my sister's broken meridians and lifted Princess Chanel's curse, said Zanali. I know. I don't know what I would do if he couldn't. Noah's body trembled as he looked at Ethan's blood on his hand. The blood glistened like a mirror and showed him the images of his childhood with his father. Noah could hear Ethan's words in his mind loud and clear, as though he was behind him. Winning is great, but losing with grace and humility is just as important. I can teach you how to throw a punch but never start a fight, and always know when to walk away. I'm so lucky that I get to be your dad. Noah's eyes watered as he heard his father's words that were like mantras to him. His entire life was shaped around Ethan's words and his teachings. Noah knew although his father might not be as strong as Andreas, he was always there for him, no matter what. Now that he was on the verge of losing Ethan forever, Noah missed him more than anything. He regretted the moments he spent roaming around instead of staying with his father. Suddenly, the sound of thunderclaps stopped Noah's train of thought and brought him back to reality. The windows in the manor shuddered, making a thudding noise. Zanali looked around the hall as the chandeliers and light orbs flickered. Soon they noticed the area around the manor darkened. Zanali strolled outside the manor and joined a group of guardians staring at the sky. The stars and moon were nowhere to be found in the sky. Instead, dark clouds surrounded the sky as far as one could see. When the lightning flashed across the dark sky, Zanali saw a large shadow of a dragon above the clouds. He is here, Zanali muttered under her breath. Through the dark clouds, a dragon with crimson-red scales descended to the ground. The soldiers and the guardians tensed as they clenched their swords and spears tight. But no one dared to cast a spell or attack the dragon as they all moved away from the front yard, making space for the dragon to land. Finally, Zanali saw the Dark Lord and the Dark Queen standing atop the dragon. They stared at the guardians and the soldiers without a shred of fear in their eyes. In fact, they looked amused to see so many of them. The dragon bore its teeth, threatening everyone to burn them down if they even lifted a finger against the Dark Lord and the Dark Queen. Just the sheer size of the dragon and its fusion stage cultivation level was enough to make many soldiers shudder in fear. When Michael slid down Nightmare's wings and landed on the ground, Diana came running outside. As soon as she laid her eyes on his smiling face, all the worries and sadness drifted away from her heart. She wanted to welcome him with open arms, yet she had to control her motherly instincts for now. The nobles who witnessed the Dark Lord walking into the Supreme Guardian's home gasped in shock. Nadia Hall was in the crowd, watching and recording everything to put in the newspaper the next day. Under their shocked gazes, Michael made his way into the home and met Diana before the doorway. "I wish we had met under different circumstances, Lady Diana." Diana stood before Michael like a statue. "Everything will be all right," Michael said with a reassuring smile. Whenever he saw this woman, he felt a deep connection with her to the point he wanted to wipe those tears off her face. He couldn't see her shedding tears. Michael knew words weren't enough to make her feel good. Thus he entered the hall with the system screaming in his head. The trip was worth the risk as he earned hundreds of thousands of badass points in a few seconds. As soon as he stepped into the hall, Noah was the first one he saw. But to Michael's surprise, Noah looked relieved to see him instead of furious or tense. Contrary to Noah's demeanor, Zanali and King Breedia trembled. One trembled in anger for killing her best friend, while the other trembled in pure fear. No one in the hall dared to make a sound in front of the Dark Lord. "Brother Ghost," Sabrina broke through the silence with her words. She came running to him and jumped onto him for a hug. "I should see Lord Ethan first," said Michael, ignoring everything and everyone else. While Michael was following Sabrina toward Ethan, Zanali, and Gaia entered into a staring contest. This was the first time they met each other in their real form since Zanali threw Gaia in prison. The tension between them was certainly high. One could see the burning rage in Gaia's eyes. She took a couple of steps and met Zanali in the middle. "Gaia," said Zanali. "Zanali," said Gaia. "Believe it or not, Father still regrets breaking your meridians. He even wants to see you again," said Zanali. Gaia let out a murderous chuckle. "What? Is he tired of living?" "I am asking this because," Gaia slowly leaned forward, "I want to drag his ass off the throne and put an arrow through his heart," Gaia whispered into Zanali's ear. Chapter 866. Do you see the hypocrisy? Leaving Zanali in shock, Gaia returned to Michael's side. Zanali knew Gaia always hated her father, but she never thought Gaia actually wanted to kill her own father. The killing intent she saw in Gaia's eyes was real, very real. Ethan was laid to rest on a white sofa that turned completely red with blood. Michael dropped to one knee beside Rowena. The sound of lightning bolts crackling around the two swords on his back made Rowena's neck hair stand up. If not for Ethan's current state, everyone would have been stunned by the dark swords. Tiny crimson-red bolts of lightning crackled around the three dragon-coiled hilts that were sticking out of the sheath as Michael simply greeted Rowena with a nod. "Can you lift the curse?" Rowena asked Michael. The cold Bowtie's eyes were mixed with grief, helplessness, and anger. But she was good at hiding her emotions. Even when her father was on the verge of dying, she remained stoic and calm. "I can." Michael's simple answer lifted an immense weight from everyone's hearts and rekindled the light of hope once again. He glanced around the hall to see everyone's reaction until his gaze fell on Bai Ning. She was frozen up to her neck. Judging by the thick layer of bone-chilling ice around her, Michael could tell the old woman did something foolish enough to make Rowena freeze her. "I never thought I'd see you again," Michael said, calmly looking at Bai Ning. Michael's words surprised Rowena as she never thought he knew Bai Ning. "How did you know her?" Rowena couldn't help asking Michael. Without answering Rowena, Michael flicked his wrist as everyone in the hall, except Diana, tensed. They thought the Dark Lord was about to unleash his wrath upon them. "Relax," Gaia waved it off as Michael took out a crystal sphere from his space ring. "What is that?" asked Noah, creasing his brows. "Recording crystal." After Michael answered Noah, he turned his head to the side and looked at Rowena. "You asked me how I know her. Well, this is how." Michael placed the sphere on the ground. "Do not listen to his poisonous words, holy maiden," Bai Ning growled. The old woman panicked because she knew what he was about to show the holy maiden. Pialfadialfanu iota, bright rays of light shot from the sphere and formed a glistening square that showed an image of a barren field. This barren field had nothing except headstones with names carved on them. Dark clouds watched over the barren field, casting an inky blackness to the graveyard. Hundreds or even thousands of headstones remained there, symbolizing the men and women who were laid to rest underneath. This graveyard doesn't have brave soldiers or evil followers of mine. On the contrary, they were men, women, and children who just wanted to live a peaceful life in their own world. "Seize him, holy maiden!" Bai Ning roared as she struggled to break the ice around her. Several cracks began to appear in the crystallized ice, but Rowena simply turned her gaze back to Bai Ning as the ice grew thicker, colder, and stronger. And she was responsible for all their deaths. Michael threw a cold, deadly glance at Bai Ning. Rowena clenched her fist as she couldn't simply believe the words coming out of Michael's mouth. She slaughtered thousands of people, including children, yet you all call us evil. Anyone see the hypocrisy here? Gaia snarled. I'm not here to prove myself. If you don't believe me, you can ask her after I lift the curse, which is why I am here, said Michael. He just threw a spark in Rowena's heart and hoped it would turn into a wildfire. Although Michael didn't spend much time with Rowena, he knew just enough to tell Rowena wouldn't have agreed to invade Itnes and slaughter the natives. I heard no such reports of slaughter, Rowena coldly said as Noah agreed with a nod. That's because it happened in another world, Gaia simply answered Rowena and turned her gaze to Bai Ning. Why don't you ask her yourself? Gaia pointed at Bai Ning. Judging by how everyone looks, it seems this granny hasn't told anyone about her little adventure to another world. Gaia folded her arms as she stared at Bai Ning, who opened and closed her mouth like she was searching for a suitable answer to give Rowena. As I said, lifting the curse is why we are here. To do that, I need those two out of here, Michael said to Noah, pointing at King Bredia and King Porter Forbes. Without saying another word, Porter made his way out of the hall. King Bredia, on the other hand, seemed reluctant for a moment until Noah reassured him with a nod. Then King Bredia followed King Porter outside without making direct eye contact with the Dark Lord. After the two kings left the hall, only Diana, her children, Zanali and Bai Ning, remained in the hall with Gaia and Michael. When Bai Ning saw the holy maiden's murderous gaze on her, she felt a chill running down her spine. The old woman shivered and broke into a sweat. Now he might shake and squirm. Do not panic, Michael's voice swept across the hall. No one dared to raise a finger against Michael as they remained completely still. It showed Michael how desperate they were. But there was something else that Michael could see in their eyes: trust. They trusted him that he wouldn't harm Ethan. Even Noah seemed to trust Michael. Granted, he might be their last hope, but still he was surprised to see their trust in him. Michael waited until everyone nodded their heads. Is it going to hurt him? Sabrina asked Michael while holding Ethan's hand tight. Not more than when he was stabbed, said Michael. Since Rowena was sitting next to Michael, she felt the air around Michael getting warm. Noah walked closer to his father and stood next to Michael. When Diana saw Dean standing between Noah and Rowena, her heart trembled. Looking at all four of her children together created some unknown feelings. Zanali couldn't believe the Dark Lord was standing right between the Holy Maiden and the Supreme Guardian. Just as Michael informed them, Ethan's body squirmed. Blood seeped through Ethan's eyes and nostrils. You must have pissed off someone really powerful, said Michael as he placed his hand on Ethan's chest. His words were pointed at Noah. I see two types of blood here, Gaia drew Diana's attention with her words. Lord Ethan must have attacked the assassin and made him spill some blood. Gaia squatted beside a pool of blood where Ethan was stabbed by the assassin. The ground was soaked with cake and blood. Together they formed a messy red paste. While Gaia was investigating the blood trail, the system informed Michael of everything he needed to know to break the curse. Unfortunately, it was not so simple as the curses Michael lifted till now. No wonder they called me. Michael realized why they chose to call the Dark Lord himself despite all the history between them. Ethan finally stopped squirming when Michael took his hand off Ethan's chest. I have good news and bad news, said Michael, standing to his feet. I think you all want to hear the good news first. Okay, here you go. I can lift the curse and heal him back to life with no side effects. Noah heaved a sigh of relief. Everyone, including Zanali, looked relieved to hear Michael. Diana's decision to summon the Dark Lord seemed to be the right decision despite the consequences they would face afterward to Zanali. What's the bad news? Noah asked Michael. The curse is a lot more complicated than I anticipated. I need certain things to lift the curse. Certain things you might not approve of. Michael turned his gaze to Noah. What do you need? Asked Diana with a cold tone. No matter what he asked, Diana was willing to give them. Unlike typical curses, the curse put on him is sentient. It's like a parasite slowly eating through his soul. As long as it's alive, the host's soul will be devoured. So I need to give the curse a new host, kill it with the host and heal him. Otherwise, the curse will end his life in about 5 hours. Michael explained how the curse put on Ethan works. To be honest, he was surprised and terrified at the same time of the curse. One thing was for sure, whoever put the curse must be insanely powerful or resourceful, to say the least. You need a vessel to hold the curse, Rowena said as Michael nodded. The vessel must be emptied out of its soul not more than 5 minutes before without harming the vessel itself. In other words, you have to kill someone without hurting the body, Gaia explained to the others in case they didn't understand Michael. Just bring me someone stronger than or a fusion stage cultivator, Michael waved his hands before making his way to the sofa on the other side of Ethan. He plunged onto the sofa and put his leg atop one. You might want to loosen your no-kill rule if you want to save your father, Supreme Guardian, Michael calmly said with a slightly devilish grin on his face. Looking at the Dark Lord sitting there like this was his own homemade Xanalis blood boil. The murderer who slaughtered thousands of people and her best friend was sitting before her surrounded by people who were responsible for taking him down, yet they could do nothing. It was simply outrageous. Noah was speechless for a moment as Ethan began to cough out dark blood. The webs of dark veins started to spread through his body despite the ice around the stand wound. You better hurry, said Michael. Then he took out a healing potion from his space ring and sent it floating toward Noah. That would keep him from dying until the curse is lifted. Noah stared at the healing potion hovering before his face without batting an eye. Seeing Noah's reluctance to take the healing potion and give it to his father, Michael simply laid back on the sofa and said, If I want to harm your father, I just have to leave simply. Ethan coughed up more blood while Noah pondered about whether to take the healing potion or not. With each passing second, Ethan's condition became worse as the dark veins reached the side of his cheek. Having no other choice, Noah took the healing potion and poured it into Ethan's mouth. Little did Noah know the healing potion was infused with nanites. In other words, Noah gave Ethan the blood tonic, enabling Michael to end Ethan's life with a snap of his finger. Chapter 867. Eating a soul in front of Noah. Michael didn't intend to harm or hurt Ethan, but he liked to have as many trump cards as possible against Noah. After Noah unknowingly emptied the blood tonic into Ethan's mouth, Rowena prepared herself to bring a prisoner from Sky Hall itself. Considering Rowena knew why Noah decided not to kill anymore, she didn't let her little brother go through choosing someone to die. "I'll be back," Rowena said before heading straight back to her room, where she had the teleportation array to reach her floating castle. Meanwhile, Michael laid back on the staff and threw his hands wide. "What more can you tell me about the assassin's trail?" Diana came to Gaia and asked, hiding her killing intent from showing in her eyes. Gaia was surprised for a moment as Diana always seemed kind, calm, and compassionate. But the way she questioned her tickled a nerve inside Gaia. Within the kind, compassionate woman there was something else. Normally, Gaia would have said to go ask the Guardians. However, she had a soft spot for Ethan and Diana as they always treated them kindly. Because of the kindness Diana showed Michael, Gaia helped her a bit. Of course, Diana was an expert hunter, probably one of the best trackers, yet at that moment her mind was in disarray. Hence, Diana sought Gaia's help, another best tracker. Gaia pointed at the pool of blood near the cake. The assassin was clever enough to avoid leaving a blood trail of his own. An artifact he wore quickly closed the wound on his shoulder before he disappeared, but not before shedding some blood onto the ground. Unless one was a Naga, the blood on the ground would look the same. Since Gaia was one, she was able to see two distinct bloods on the ground. You may not notice, but there are two types of blood here. One belongs to a human and the other. Gaia dipped her finger inside the blood and brought it before her eyes. She started at the blood on her finger for a moment. "If I have to guess, a beast man," Gaia said. "Beast man," Diana mumbled under her breath. Gaia had no idea she just gave Harriet Hunt her next target location. Even if it took Diana to search the entire kingdom and kill hundreds of beastmen, she would find the assassin or at least a clue about him. While they were waiting for Rowena to bring someone for Michael to kill, they heard a door creaking open. As they looked up at the second-floor balcony, they were surprised to see Princess Catherine and Andrews. When Princess Catherine and Andrews saw the Dark Lord leisurely sitting in their main hall, they were startled to the core. "You!" Princess Catherine growled as she climbed down the stairs with a large belly. Andrews supported her in climbing down the stairs. Fortunately, Andrews saw Noah and Zanali in the hall, which gave him the courage to stand still without shivering in front of Ghost. Andrews still had nightmares of the time he almost got beaten to death by Ghost during the tournament. "What are you doing here?" "Noah, what is he doing here?" Catherine growled. Compared to the fact the Dark Lord was here, Ethan became less important in Catherine's eyes. One couldn't blame her though, as any mother would be freaked out to share a space with the man who slaughtered thousands of people without discrimination and destroyed an entire kingdom. Catherine felt a chill when Gaia walked past her, giving her a devilish grin. She sat beside the Dark Lord and waited for Noah to respond to Catherine. "Everything is under control, Catherine. He is here to help, Father. Are you out of your mind, Noah?" Catherine raised her voice. Unfortunately, Catherine still hadn't moved on from the time Michael beat Andrew to a pulp, slaughtered her father's royal guards, beat him to a pulp on his own throne, and threatened to kill her and her unborn child. Her anger and fury blinded her intellect. Usually Diana would have shut her up, but Diana was too focused on the pool of blood. She was formulating a whole new plan to invade the Beastmen Kingdom and track down the one who sent the assassin. You are the Supreme Guardian. How could you trust this evil murdering? Catherine gritted her teeth as her mind went blank in overwhelming anger. I see you haven't changed a bit over the past years, Gaia calmly said. Why are you here? Go back to the shelter and stay there, said Noah. Do you think we'll be safe when he's here? Catherine rebuked. So riddle me this, princess. If I am so evil like you claim, isn't it better to keep your mouth shut, especially with a baby inside you? Michael's simple question made Catherine quickly shut her mouth. Noah clenched his fist, seeing Ghost threatening his own family in his own home. However, he had to keep his anger under control. After all, Ghost was the only one who could save Ethan. You bastard, Catherine cussed before leaving the main hall as fast as she came. Mother, Sabrina called Diana, who seemed to be deep in her own thoughts. Mother, only when Sabrina called her twice did Diana snap back to reality. Where is Rowena? Diana asked Sabrina. She went to bring someone, Sabrina weakly said. How is Hammond, by the way? Michael asked Noah. The question completely startled Noah. Don't be too surprised, Noah. Keep him safe because too many people are looking for him, said Michael. He wanted to play mind games with Noah and hoped it might get Noah to make a mistake. The dwarves desperately scoured through the kingdoms to find Hammond so they could continue making weapons of mass destruction. On the other hand, the Empress wanted Hammond to answer for his crimes one way or another. Noah wanted to keep Hammond safe and use his brains for good. In simple terms, they all wanted Hammond to be alive. That was where Michael differed. Unlike them, he wanted Hammond dead. Not that Michael was afraid of his little toys, but Hammond could become an annoyance to him and an asset to Noah. And that irked Michael in the wrong way. That includes you, right? Noah coldly asked. I am actually surprised that you keep him safe instead of putting him on trial for his crimes. Michael ignored Noah's question and talked about Hammond's crimes. Just as Michael expected, Noah's eyes glistened with doubt and shock. Am I the only evildoer and criminal in your eyes? Michael chuckled. Hammond is not a criminal, Noah said. He didn't tell you, did he? Michael pretended to be surprised. The next time you see him, why don't you ask him about a little village called Hog's Feet in Gondolin? Said Michael. Noah did a thorough background search on Hammond and came up with no criminal records. In fact, Noah wasn't wrong either. Hammond was not a criminal by any means. However, he was responsible for the deaths of 150 villagers. The Empress punished everyone involved in their deaths except for Hammond. To keep the news from spreading and Hammond's secret safe, the Empress wiped off all the evidence and trials about the Hog's Feet incident. The village just simply vanished from the face of the world, and the map, and no one had ever talked about it until now. Noah had so many questions running around his mind, but before he could inquire the Dark Lord about them, Rowena returned to the main hall, dragging an orc in chains. The orc's hands and legs were tied with iron chains, and his mouth was covered with a piece of cloth, preventing the orc from making a sound. Rowena dragged the orc by his long hair like he was a doll and threw him at Michael's feet. Hey, race your vessel, Rowena said. What did he do? Noah asked Rowena. Went rogue and slaughtered innocent people, Rowena answered Noah while looking at Bai Ning. She wordlessly told the old woman that if what the Dark Lord said about her was true, she would suffer the same fate as the orc. Michael calmly rose from the sofa and lifted the orc by his neck in one hand. Suddenly, the light orcs and the chandelier started to flicker. Soon, the light they produced was snuffed out by an invisible force. Instead, darkness occupied every inch of the hall. Zanali took a step back due to her subconscious fear and saw the orc squirm in the Dark Lord's hands. The light coming through the windows and the door barely illuminated the white smoke emerging from the orc's mouth. Noah saw Ghost inhale the white smoke as the light of life slowly left the orc's eyes. Every fiber in Noah's body told him to stop Ghost from killing the orc, except he knew it was the only way to save Ethan. Besides, he didn't think Rowena would let him stop Ghost. Unlike him, his big sister had no quarrels with killing criminals, and those deserved it. The orc's soul turned into experience points while the badass points skyrocketed through the roof. He killed someone in front of the Supreme Guardians, and there was nothing he could do about it. The system deemed the action pretty badass. After Michael devoured the orc's soul, he threw the empty vessel to the ground and cracked his neck. Gradually, the lights that went out slowly came back to life, lighting the place. What did you do? Zanali asked in shock. She had never seen such an act of evil as he devoured the orc's soul completely. The power of eating one's soul made Zanali tremble in fear. Even Noah was startled by this strange power. According to Andreas, one's soul was the key to entering the afterlife. By destroying the soul itself, the Dark Lord made them completely cease to exist without letting them enter into an afterlife. What he did was a punishment worse than death. He didn't deserve this, Noah muttered. And Father doesn't deserve this either, Rowena rebuked Noah's comment. She knew the reason behind Noah's no-kill rule and even accepted Noah's decision, although she thought the rule would hinder Noah's progression. However, she would not let Noah's rules hurt her family. Family was everything to Rowena and she would do anything to protect them. Chapter 868, Back to the Fire Realm. Ding. Congrats to the host for killing a fusion stage level 6 orc. The reward is 500,000 experience points as well as 20,000 badass points. The Soul Eater has absorbed the soul of the orc. The host has received 300,000 experience points. Michael received 800,000 experience points in total because of the Soul Eater. If he had simply killed the orc, he would have only received 500,000 experience points. The Soul Eater awarded extra experience points based on how evil the absorbed soul was. Since Michael received 300,000, he could tell the orc led a pretty evil life on contrary to his fellow orc kind. It was an extremely rare occurrence to see an evil orc in the world as the orcs lived peacefully, studying and mastering rune mastery. After shocking everyone by absorbing the orc's soul, Michael felt stronger. He threw the orc's body to the ground and strolled toward Ethan. The curse won't let us take him outside this hall. So you might want to take a good look at your house, said Michael. Wait, Noah asked Michael to wait. He then turned his gaze toward Sabrina and Diana. Mother, Sabi, you two should go to the shelter and stay there, Noah said. Among everyone in the hall, Sabrina and Diana were the weaker, or at least that's what everyone thought. Little did Noah know his mother was a fusion stage level 10 cultivator, pretending to be at the body strengthening stage. Although Michael sensed something amiss with Diana's energy radiation, he couldn't see through her cultivation. The mark put on by the mysterious oracle was strong enough to keep Diana safe from even the eyes of Skyhall. Sabi, do as your brother says, Diana said, but she didn't seem to be moving an inch away. No. I want to be at his side, Sabrina shook her head. She looked at Michael for his support, but he stayed away from their family quarrel. It's going to be dangerous, Sabi. We cannot focus on protecting you once something happens. Noah tried to reason with Sabrina, only to see her ignore his words. I can fight too, Sabrina bluntly said. Michael noticed Sabrina taking steps toward Sabrina without uttering a word. Rowena, tell them I can dash. Sabrina's words were abruptly cut short when Sabrina grabbed her shoulder and teleported her to the shelter. In a blink of an eye, Sabrina vanished into thin air. You know she hates that, Noah sighed. This is no time to argue, Rowena coldly said. What about her? Michael asked, looking at Diana. At least Sabrina was at the soul refining stage. Compared to Sabrina, Diana was weak as a newborn baby. So even if the curse didn't mutate the orc's body and stayed at the fusion stage, Diana wouldn't even be able to survive the battle, let alone fight. According to the system, there was a 98% chance for the curse to make the vessel stronger. Asking Diana to hit the shelter was the sensible thing to do, but it was Rowena and Noah's task, not his. As much as he cared for Lady Diana, he wasn't going to argue with her. If she wanted to stay and become collateral, it was her fate and she couldn't blame anyone but herself. Don't even think about it. Rowena took a step forward toward Diana when Michael heard Diana coldly warn Rowena. For the first time, Michael noticed the sudden change in Diana's demeanor. Gaia also noticed this change and could tell this woman might not be what she seemed to be. Mother, you can't be here, said Rowena. In front of her mother, Rowena lost her coldness and turned into a caring child. I will, and there is nothing you can do about it. Diana raised her one hand and refused to leave the hall. Then she turned her gaze at Michael. Ghost, you can begin, Diana said. Noah and Rowena looked at each other as they could tell there was no point in arguing with their mother. To be honest, they hadn't seen her like this forever. As much as they liked Diana to leave the hall, they had no way of making her leave except by force. However, they couldn't bring themselves to forcefully teleport her mother like Rowena did to Sabrina. Wait, Rowena stopped Michael once again. Time is running out. Michael creased his brows. He hated this kind of family drama. Since Michael had no idea how strong Diana was, he thought it was stupid of Diana to stay in the hall. If he was in Noah's place, he would have teleported Diana by force without giving a second thought. After all, it was better to suffer Diana's wrath afterward than cry beside her dead body. Unfortunately, Noah and Rowena respected Diana to the point they didn't even dare to raise a finger against her word. In Michael's eyes, it was pretty stupid. Do not let her out of your sight, Rowena warned Noah as she finally accepted that Diana was not going to leave the hall. Here we go, Michael mumbled as he placed his hand on Ethan's chest. System, start the process, Michael ordered the system. Zanali and Gaia strolled toward Ethan and stood beside their lovers. They all stood around Ethan in a circle and completely ignored Bai Ning. None of them batted an eye as they stared at Michael's hand on Ethan's chest. Soon they heard a strange otherworldly whistling noise as Ethan groaned in pain. The whistling sound gradually turned into a scream, an angered scream. Prepare yourselves, Michael warned them. The curse resisted the pull and screamed inside his head. The others were fortunate enough not to hear the curse's scream. Blood trickled down his nostrils due to the curse's resistance, but Michael ignored all the pain and focused on pulling out the curse from Ethan's body. Unfortunately, pulling out the curse from Ethan's body was the easiest part. Judging by the blood coming out of Ghost's nose and the pain in his face showed Noah how difficult it was to remove the curse. Moments like this made Noah question whether the Dark Lord was really the evil Andreas claimed him to be. His mentor always talked about the dark future, where people were stripped of their free will and turned into zombies that worshipped the Dark Lord forever. Suppose the Dark Lord was really that evil, why did he even bother to save his father? It would make more sense if he let Ethan die than save him. Noah wished Andreas could see everything and give him a proper explanation for the Dark Lord's actions. At that moment, Noah had no other explanation that the Dark Lord had humanity and was grateful enough to save his ally. As the screaming sounded louder and louder, they all saw a ball of red glow coming out of Ethan's chest. The ball of light frantically vibrated under Ghost's hands to get back into Ethan's body. Michael grabbed the ball of light with both his hands and turned his gaze at Noah. Lift his body, Michael motioned to Noah to lift the orc's body. Noah immediately picked the orc by his shoulders as Michael looked at Rowena. As soon as I send this curse into the orc, teleport Lord Ethan somewhere else. Can you do that? Yes, Rowena bobbed her head up and down. Meanwhile, Noah held the orc straight by his broad shoulders. Fuck, it's stronger than I thought. Michael gritted his teeth as he slowly moved the ball of light toward the orc's mouth. Bai Ning watched the scene with open mouth. She was completely speechless by the power she felt from the curse. What shocked her more was the power radiation from the curse felt just the same as the power radiation she felt from the mysterious lord she talked to. The old woman was spot on, as the curse indeed originated from Andor, the god of space and time. But although Andor ordered Sky Hall to attempt to assassinate Ethan and created the curse, he didn't intend to curse Ethan. On the contrary, Andor just wanted an assassin to try to kill Ethan, then blamed the Dark Lord for the attempt on Ethan's life and expected Noah to retaliate. His plan took a turn when someone switched the assassin's blade with the cursed dagger. As a result, the assassin cursed Ethan when he stabbed him with it. Since Ethan cut the assassin with the dagger when he fought back, the assassin got cursed in return. Hence, even if Diana managed to find the assassin, he would be long dead unless Andor himself appeared to save the assassin. Despite the curse's counterforce, Michael was strong enough to resist the curse and move it to the orc. Cut him open, Michael said to Noah, gritting his teeth. Noah immediately flicked his wrist as the white-hilt sword appeared in his hand. Without wasting a second, Noah stabbed the orc from behind and cut his chest open. Michael growled as he pushed the ball of light into the bleeding cut. The moment Michael pushed the ball of light, aka the curse, into the orc's body, Rowena emptied a healing potion down Ethan's mouth and teleported him to the shelter. As soon as Ethan disappeared from the main hall, a blast of energy shot out of the orc and sent everyone around flying away. Even Michael couldn't escape from the blast as he hit the wall pretty hard, forming a human-sized hole in the wall. Arga! A roar of agony echoed through the entire kingdom. The thunderous roar made everyone immediately close their ears. Michael managed to lift his head and look at the orc. He stood where Ethan was, with dark webs running through his body. The orc's eyes literally glowed like someone lit a fire in them. In a few seconds, the orc's jade-green body turned darker with all the webs of cursed energy. When Michael was about to rise to his feet, the orc let out another roar. The last thing Michael remembered before everything turned black was the house crumbling down. He felt the space around him distort, the feeling similar to activating a teleportation array. Just as he thought, the darkness faded away, revealing a barren red land under a stormy sky. Where am I? Michael asked as he looked around. Fire Realm? He heard Rowena's voice from the side. Chapter 869. Sealbearer. The Fire Realm was a seismically active landscape, with streams of flowing magma and expanses of semi-molten rock and hardened purple stone. The land was studded with small volcanoes and flame spouts, which regularly spurted a flaming gas. The temperature was hot enough to melt a body-strengthening stage cultivator like a wax statue. Due to the volcanic ashes and specks of flame in the air, nothing could be clearly seen by the naked eye. If the volcanoes weren't bad enough, the sandstorms and occasional thunderstorms worsened everything. Diana slowly picked herself up from the ground and looked around her to see where she was. The curse teleported her into a canyon surrounded by semi-molten rock and flowing magma. Just the sight of it helped her realize where she was. Although the realm looked somewhat similar to the demon's grave, the temperature was much higher than the demon's grave. As a result, Diana realized she was teleported to the Fire Realm. Unfortunately, she was not a stranger to the Fire Realm. "I need to find my kids," Diana mumbled under her breath. Since the orc teleported them here, Diana guessed slaying the orc might teleport them back to Pentown. But before that, she had to find her children. She hoped they weren't in trouble. Ignoring the sandstorm, Diana made her way forward. She tore her sleeves and covered her mouth with the cloth. The storm became worse by the second. Onward she went, searching for her children and the orc. On her way, she spread her senses to detect any threats around her. The last time Diana was here, she almost burned down the entire Hell City, the only settlement inside the Fire Realm. Instead of scouring through the entire realm blindly, Diana decided to reach Hell City and hoped her children would share the same thought unless they came across the orc first. For a moment she had to be optimistic. When Diana's senses detected no threat or life signs around her, she quickly ascended into the air and flew out of the canyon. A few seconds later, Diana landed on a naturally formed stone structure. From atop, she could see Barrow Land outside the canyon. Unfortunately, she still couldn't locate Hell City. Luckily for her, she had a compass in her space ring. It was given to her by her mentor when she was training to be the next Holy Maiden. Never in a million years, Diana thought she had to use the compass once again. But she had no other choices, considering flying in higher altitudes would attract monsters that roamed the sky. She wanted to avoid unnecessary battles while she was in the Fire Realm. With a flick of her wrist, Diana took out a compass made out of emerald green metal. The needle and the letters were etched with gold, as the glass covering the compass had several cracks. Holding the compass in her hand brought down some memories she really wanted to forget. For a moment, she shoved these memories back into her mind and held the compass in her palm. The needle slowly moved until it stopped, pointing at the southwest side. Hell City. Diana heaved a heavy sigh before putting the compass back into her space ring. But when she was about to fly toward Hell City, Diana heard something fall onto the ground with a loud thud. She turned around and to her surprise she saw Bai Ning, still trapped by Rowena's frost. Despite the scorching hot temperature, the frost held Bai Ning firm. Except for a few cracks, the ice shell looked unharmed by the Fire Realm. "Arg!" Bai Ning growled as she tried to break out of the ice crystal. But when she saw Diana, she heaved a sigh of relief. "Diana!" Bai Ning called out to Diana as she slowly made her way toward the old woman. While she was walking toward Bai Ning, her mind replayed Michael's words. "She slaughtered thousands of people, including children, yet you all call us evil. Anyone see the hypocrisy here?" Gaia's voice sounded inside her head. "You have to bring me to that flowing lava?" Bai Ning looked at the molten lava canal flowing deeper into the canyon. The ice crystal trapped her within was created by a Hal immortal. Usually she could have shattered it without breaking a sweat. However, the cold flames boosted Rowena's power to the next level. Every spell in her arsenal got strengthened by the primordial flames, especially the spells related to the water element. That was why Bai Ning couldn't easily break the crystal. Of course, she could break out of the crystal in time, except Bai Ning didn't want to be trapped in the crystal for long. She was a sitting duck to the monsters roaming around the Fire Realm. They might not be able to kill her, but it didn't mean it wouldn't hurt when they chewed through her skin and bones. Some of the monsters in the Fire Realm were even capable of killing an immortal and eating their souls, just like the Dark Lord absorbed the orc's soul. "Hurry up!" Bai Ning rushed Diana. In her rush to break out the crystal, Bai Ning overlooked the killing intent in Diana's eyes. But not for long. When the old woman saw how slow Diana was walking toward her, she felt something was amiss. "Is there a monster nearby?" Bai Ning quickly asked Diana when a sword materialized in the latter's hand. "Yes," Diana coldly answered Bai Ning. "You have to hurry. If I don't get out of this, we are both doomed," Bai Ning urged. "Can you see how strong the monster is?" Bai Ning asked as she tried to sense the monster herself. When she sensed no monsters around, Bai Ning creased her old brows. "It's right in front of me," Diana coldly answered Bai Ning again. The calm and kind woman Bai Ning knew was nowhere to be found in the woman before her. She seemed different, like a natural-born killer, a wounded predator. Those eyes staring at her burned rage and pain. "What are you blabbering about, woman?" Bai Ning growled. The old woman was losing her patience with Diana until she saw something she couldn't believe. The ball of light blinded Bai Ning and made her close her eyes. "Primordial flames?" Bai Ning muttered. The bright light blinding her was a primordial flame. Bai Ning had no doubts whatsoever. Nothing else could radiate such pure energy. The question was how this weak, feeble woman wielded the primordial flame. Even with her eyes closed, she could see the brilliance of the primordial flame. Under the light flame's heat, the crystal around Bai Ning began to melt down. When Bai Ning felt the crystal loosening, she slowly opened her eyes. She had so many questions in her mind, but before she could ask, Diana raised her sword. Bai Ning's eyes sparkled, seeing the primordial flames coiling around the black sword. As Bai Ning opened her mouth to question Diana, she sent the sword through the old woman's mouth. "Jurj!" The old woman groaned as crimson-red fumes escaped out of her mouth. Bai Ning squirmed like a worm trapped within the frost crystal. The light flames vaporized the blood while melting Bai Ning's skin on her face. If Bai Ning had any artifacts or runes to protect her life, she might have had a chance to escape Diana's wrath. Unfortunately for Bai Ning, she had nothing. In other words, Bai Ning was too cocky, as she thought who would dare to attack an immortal and the Sky Hall's elder. It was natural to develop such cockiness when one had lived thousands of years without having an enemy. Moreover, Bai Ning never expected Diana to possess a primordial flame. How could she ever expect a body-strengthening stage weakling to have not only primordial flame but a weapon capable enough to withstand one? Suppose Diana didn't have light flames in her black sword, any other swords would have shattered into pieces when she stabbed Bai Ning. But the light flames changed the outcome of the battle completely. Plus, Bai Ning was trapped within ice crystals made of cold flames. So one could say Bai Ning had to overcome two primordial flames, and it was impossible for her. Diana pulled out her sword and stabbed Bai Ning in the eyes again and again, venting all the rage buried within her. Finally, the ice trapping Bai Ning shattered under the light flame's heat. Even after Diana stabbed Bai Ning repeatedly, the old woman's body squirmed on the ground with life. "All these years, I have to see you hold my little girl hostage," Diana snarled as she stomped Bai Ning's chest. "I watched you turn her into the Holy Maiden, a weapon to be used against my sons." Diana kept stomping Bai Ning's chest until her ribs shattered. The boiling rage she felt activated the ancient god's blood in her body, temporarily boosting her cultivation power to the half-immortal stage. Diana even tripped down in pure rage and hit the ground on her knees. "You will manipulate her no more." Diana started to stab the old woman and went crazy. Blood spurted out, painting Diana's white robes red. She didn't stop stabbing her until the old woman's body was in pieces. When she stopped, there was no body on the ground for her to stab, just some pieces of burnt flesh remained. Finally, Diana let go of the black swords and put out the light flames. She started to breathe heavily as she fell down to the ground beside Bai Ning's pieces. When Diana thought everything was over, a black lightning bolt struck the ground where she killed Bai Ning and blasted Diana away. The black lightning existed for just a split second. During that split second, a glowing rune resembling a black skull appeared from Bai Ning's blood and vanished along with the lightning bolt. Unknown to Diana, she destroyed a seal designed by the past Dark Lord. As a result, the array placed between the mortal realm and the god realm weakened. If all those seals were destroyed, the war between the mortals and the gods would finally start. Chapter 870. Gaia vs. Zanali. Somewhere else in the Fire Realm, Gaia and Zanali landed on a barren land. There was nothing except a few boulders as far as they could see. Gaia picked herself up and brushed off the red sand from her black dress. When she saw Zanali a few meters away, she let out a devilish grin. Gaia clenched her fist as the APD injected a healing potion into her bloodstream, lessening the pain of hitting the ground hard. She didn't worry about Michael because she knew he could take care of himself. Besides, she was too focused on Zanali to think about anything else. This was a golden opportunity. They hadn't been alone since Zanali was 6 years old. At that time, Gaia tried to smother Zanali to death with the pillow. She would have succeeded if it wasn't for a maid who managed to stop Gaia at the wrong time. Since then they had never let Zanali alone with Gaia. Zanali growled and slowly stood up to her feet. Her brows creased as she realized where she was. However, her creased brows froze on her face when she noticed Gaia walking toward her. Zanali's instincts screamed at her as she prepared herself to fight Gaia. Anyone with a single brain cell could tell there was no way Zanali could defeat Gaia, no matter how many legendary spells she had in her arsenal. Gaia was at the half-immortal stage level 4, while Zanali was just at the soul-refining stage. Gaia could kill Zanali without breaking a sweat. However, killing Zanali quickly was not Gaia's plan. "It's you and me alone," Gaia said with her hands behind her back. She slowly circled around Zanali like a predator stalking its prey. "What a poor kitty. It seems like no one is coming to save your ass," Gaia ridiculed Zanali. Although Gaia was a princess just like Zanali, nothing was ever handed down to Gaia. She had to fight for every single thing in her life against her own family. But Zanali, on the other hand, never suffered a day in her life. While she was in Nagaland, Salisi and the kingdom had her back, and when she joined the Guardian Guild, Peyton was there to take care of her. Even after Peyton died, Noah took her under his wings and fell in love with her. All these emotions Gaia had turned into an absolute hatred and rage toward Zanali. Hence, Gaia wanted this fight to last long. "I don't need anyone to save me," Zanali tried to remain calm. "Bitch, you kidding me?" Gaia broke into laughter. The sound of her laughter swept across the barren lands. "You always had someone to look after you." Salisi, Castin, Noah, Peyton dash. "Do not speak her name." Zanali stomped the ground when she heard Gaia speak Peyton's name. Her eyes immediately turned bloodshot, burning in rage. "You and Ghost will pay for what you did to her," Zanali growled as Gaia continued to circle around Zanali. "No, we want," Gaia chuckled. "Even your precious Supreme Guardian had to come to us, to save his own father. If it wasn't for the Dark Lord, your Noah wouldn't have a family right now. He saved Diana from an assassin in her own home. He saved Sabrina from being tortured and turned into a vampire. And now he saved Ethan, who apparently got stabbed in front of all his family. You'd be a fool to think Noah could protect anyone when he can't even protect his own." Gaia spoke slowly as every single word came out loud and clear. "When the sun rises tomorrow, the entire world will know how the Supreme Guardian begged for the Dark Lord's help to save his father." Gaia grinned. "That's your whole plan, isn't it? I knew you didn't help him out of the goodness in your heart. There is no kindness in your black heart, Gaia. I can't believe we share the same blood as our father," Zanali snickered. Surprisingly, Zanali's eyes glistened with a bit of sadness. Despite how Gaia tried to kill her when she was little, Zanali used to look up to her big sister and love her with all her heart. Zanali lost count of how many times she talked her father out of punishing Gaia for all the crimes she committed throughout the kingdom. But Zanali realized how wrong she was to believe Gaia would change when she raised a prison filled with almost 2,000 prisoners to the ground, burning every single one alive. Zanali would give anything to go back to that day and stop Gaia from slaughtering all those people who deserved a second chance in their lives. "Sorry to burst your bubble, Zanali. You and I are not sisters." "You think so?" Zanali snickered without realizing the true meaning of Gaia's words. "We stopped being sisters the moment you burned those prisoners alive," Zanali growled as the images of the burning prison flashed across her eyes. Everyone in Nagaland knew Gaia was cold and cruel like her mother, but no one imagined she would be heartless enough to burn defenseless prisoners alive. What shocked them more was Gaia never regretted her actions. Zanali still vividly remembered the moment they captured Gaia and brought her before the king. "You better kill me now, father. Screw this up and you will pay with your life." Zanali heard Gaia's vengeful words she spoke to her moments before Castin broke her meridians, crippling her for life. "You failed to grasp the meaning just as always." Gaia shook her head and decided to simplify her words to Zanali. "Castian is not my father. He is just a puppet my mother put on the throne. I don't have a single drop of Castian's blood in me." Zanali's mind went blank as Gaia continued. "I always had a feeling how this spineless bitch could be my father. So imagine how glad I was when I learned he is not my father." "No, you're lying," Zanali muttered. "But don't worry, he is definitely your father. You inherited his absolute stupidity." Gaia laughed once again as she loved seeing the dumb look on Zanali's face. "Since he is not my father, I won't feel a bit of remorse for what I am going to do to him." Gaia finally stopped circling around Zanali. She looked Zanali in the eyes with a devilish grin. "I won't let you hurt him." Zanali clenched her fist. "I don't make threats. I make promises. So listen to me carefully. One day I will walk into the throne hall, put an arrow through his heart, and throw his bleeding body out of my throne. If you want to stop that, you just have to kill me." Gaia opened her arms and motioned for Zanali to attack her. "Let's end this right here, right now." Zanali stepped forward with her clenched fist. As much as Zanali was shocked to hear Gaia was not her sister, she cared for her father more and lost her sanity when Gaia threatened to kill Castiel. She didn't even care that Gaia was a half-immortal who could kill her with a snap of her fingers. At that moment, Zanali wanted to take down Gaia one way or another. Because of Gaia's overwhelming hatred for Zanali, she broke her own rule of capitalizing on cultivation power and decided to beat the hell out of Zanali. This was a fight with no cultivation, no spells and no tricks. Come on bitch. You and me. Gaia motioned her to make the first move and stood still. When Zanali reached an arm's distance from Gaia, she punched Gaia with all her strength. Instead of blocking or evading the punch, Gaia stood there and took the punch without moving an inch. Zanali's hand went numb as she felt like she had punched a stone wall. Despite the numbed hand, Zanali repeatedly punched Gaia in the face. When Zanali punched Gaia for the 50th time, a tiny drop of blood trickled down the corner of Gaia's mouth. Zanali stopped punching to take a breath as Gaia spat the blood out and wiped off her mouth. My turn, said Gaia before uppercutting Zanali in the jaw. The sheer power behind Gaia's punch sent Zanali flying into the air. 5 meters. 10 meters. 20 meters. She flew higher and higher from the ground until Gaia leaped into the air and punched Zanali again mid-air. Another shock wave exploded upon Gaia's fist, hitting Zanali's face. Blood sprayed out of Zanali's mouth as she soared down to the ground and hit the ground, forming a small crater around her. Gaia dived down like a rocket, aiming to land directly on Zanali's chest. But Zanali managed to roll around just in time. Her ribs would have shattered if she was a split second late to react. Cultivation power or not, Gaia trained her body to fight head-to-head with Michael himself. She was strong enough to lift half a ton of marble without even using arch energy. In other words, she was a monster with or without cultivation power. Zanali stood no chance against her. After she rolled away, Gaia landed in the crater as the ground cracked open. Zanali jumped back to her feet and threw her fist, only to see Gaia evade the punch and Spartan kick her in the chest. The kick made Zanali cough up blood while flinging backward like a kite without an anchor. Zanali slid through the ground, leaving a dusty trail. Every bone in Zanali's body ached as blood trickled down from her nose and mouth. Despite the pain, Zanali picked herself up to fight Gaia. You must be a special kind of idiot to think you can win this fight, Gaia said, cracking her fists. It's not the size of the dog in the fight. It's the size of the fight in the dog. Zanali wiped off the blood from her mouth and said, You fight to kill. I fight to save. There is a difference, said Zanali. My stupid sister, Gaia shook her head, disappointed with Zanali. Will and purpose do not matter when you are an ant trying to move a mountain, said Gaia. Come on then. Zanali slowly raised her hand and taunted Gaia to come at her. Chapter 871. Celestial Stage Threat. Gaia dashed at Zanali with one intention: beat her to death. She caught Zanali's fist before it could reach her face and headbutt in return. Zanali's nose broke with a sickening crunch. Blood spurted out of her broken nostrils as Gaia pulled Zanali close to her by hand and kicked her in the gut. Zanali vomited blood and felt her sight blur. Without giving any time for Zanali to retaliate, Gaia lifted Zanali by her waist and slammed her on the ground. Then Gaia kicked her in the gut, sending her flying straight onto the boulder a few meters away. The boulder crumbled down with a loud boom when Zanali collided with it. This is what you wanted, right? Zanali barely uttered these words, coughing up blood. Hearing her words, Gaia halted her steps. Cast may not be your father, but I always thought of you as my sister. Blood oozed out from her nose and mouth. Her pretty turned completely red from the blood. That's not going to work on me, Gaia snickered. Show me one loving little sister who ordered her big sister's meridians to be broken. Gaia's words were filled with rage and pain. Everyone blamed her for trying to kill Zanali when they were little. But no one bothered to ask why she did that. Since the day Zanali was born, Gaia was thrown away like a broken Troy. She received no love from her family, including her own father. While Gaia was having nightmares, Zanali slept peacefully in her mother's and father's embrace. The lack of attention and love turned into jealousy, and jealousy turned into hatred. Gaia thought she could get over the pity-hatred, but Zanali made it worse when she and Salisi ran the kingdom into the ground with their new policies and rules. Once Castiel decided to give the throne to Zanali instead of her, Gaia finally snapped and went berserk. The source of all her hardships and problems was Zanali. If Zanali had never existed, she wouldn't have experienced everything she did. It was either breaking your meridians or killing you. You are here because of me, because of what I chose, Zanali said, struggling to rise to her feet. As much as her mind wanted to fight, her body was beyond exhausted. Every fiber in her body ached, begging her to close her eyes and give up. Your life is a handout I gave you, Zanali's voice stuttered. On the verge of death, Zanali remembered all her good memories with Gaia, although there were only a few. One of those good memories was the time Gaia came to her aid when a couple of tyrants tried to bully her without knowing she was a princess. Zanali could still vividly see how Gaia nearly beat those guys to death, shouting they deserved to die for laying their hands on her sister. Zanali had to stop Gaia from killing those bullies. Even after she grew up, many feared speaking against Zanali as they feared offending Gaia. Like it or not, Zanali felt protected when Gaia was around. After hearing Zanali's words, Gaia dashed at her and grabbed her by her neck. She raised her to the air as Zanali's face slowly turned pale. Go ahead. I can't fight anymore. If killing me will quench your thirst for revenge, do it, Zanali stuttered. Pielfa knew. Forgive me for existing. Zanali closed her eyes and prepared to embrace the sweet death by her sister's hands. Tears trickled down from her eyes as Gaia gritted her teeth. Silence fell over the area as the scorching wind breezed past them. The mere thought that she was alive because of Zanali made her blood boil. Her mind was telling her to end Zanali's life and a future threat to the Dark Army. However, her instincts and heart told otherwise. They told her to spare her life and settle the debt once and for all. At that moment, she wanted Michael to be by her side and tell her what to do. She closed her eyes and tried to feel a connection with him. To her surprise, she saw the sight of her and Michael standing atop the mountain hill, overlooking the dark ocean. You know how much I hate slavery. Debt is a slavery of free men, Gaia heard Michael's words in her mind. After a brief moment of deep thinking, Gaia clenched her fist and let go of Zanali. It wouldn't take a second for her to kill Zanali. However, killing Zanali would make her indebted to Zanali forever. Gaia didn't want to live a life that was handed out to her by the one she hated the most. She would rather die than live the life Zanali gave her. Now that she spared Zanali's life when she could have easily ended her, it settled the debt between them. This settles my debt. The next time you fight me, nothing will stop me from ending your life. Gaia punched Zanali in the face hard enough to knock her out completely. The orc teleported us here, Michael heard Noah's voice. Unfortunately, Michael was teleported to the fire realm with Noah and Rowena. He stood between them and looked around the fire realm. What Noah said was the only explanation for how they reached the fire realm. Michael was surprised that the curse was able to teleport them to another realm. We are not alone, Rowena coldly said. Although they were standing in an empty barrel land with several crates around them, they sensed another powerful being nearby. Rowena's voice had a bit of uneasiness and Michael knew why. The being he sensed was several times stronger than him. To be precise, a half-celestial stage level 3 being. The sandstone blocking their view suddenly stopped and faded away, clearly revealing the empty, barren land around them. Michael wished the land was empty as it looked. Soon, a shadowy figure with glowing red eyes emerged from the ground and hovered in the air. The shadowy figure somehow resembled the orc Michael put the curse in. However, the figure seemed ethereal. A celestial stage being, Noah's brows arched up. Noah, stay behind me, Rowena said to Noah. As the second strongest and his big sister, she felt responsible for Noah's safety. He was the weakest among them. Jianghu. The shadowy figure let out an angry growl. Michael made no sudden moves as he calculated his odds against the half-celestial stage. System, Michael called out the system. The host has a 20% chance of defeating the shadow monster if you fought alone. Suppose the host fought together with Rowena and Noah. In that case, you have a 45% chance of defeating the shadow monster. The system quickly analyzed the shadow monster according to Michael's order and informed him back. Michael did not like the odds at all. However, the system can sense Noah is on the verge of triggering his heavenly tribulation. If he succeeded, the host's chance of winning against the shadow monster would go up to 60%. Noah, go ahead and start the heavenly tribulation. Rowena took Michael by surprise and ordered Noah to trigger his heavenly tribulation. I will cover you, said Rowena. This is not the time for tribulation. Noah shook his head. Michael didn't blame Noah for being reluctant to trigger his heavenly tribulation. Firstly, this was not a safe place for heavenly tribulation. Secondly, anyone would be afraid to start their heavenly tribulation in front of his arch-nemesis. The third reason would be the monsters roaming around the area. You must be at the half-immortal stage for us to have any chance of defeating this monstrosity, said Rowena. The shadow monster calmly hovered in the air as though it was waiting for the trio to make a move. As much as Michael liked to kill a half-celestial stage being and earn those sweet experience points, he remained still. Double-crossing Noah during his heavenly tribulation seemed tricky with Rowena around. It was still too early for him to piss off the Holy Maiden and receive the wrath of the entire Sky Hall. Besides, he knew there was no way of killing Noah without a god-killing weapon. Even if Michael destroyed Noah during the tribulation, his soul would depart and find another vessel. Michael would be in the dark at that time without knowing Noah's new identity. As far as Michael was concerned, an unknown enemy was far too dangerous than the known one. The last thing Michael wanted Noah to have was anonymity. In other words, double-crossing Noah had more cons than pros. Finally, the monster lost his patience as it started to float toward them. Oh, Michael took a step back and slowly moved his hand to the dark swords. Michael would rather fight on his own than depend on Noah. Once he cast the death range and take the full Dark Lord form, he would be at Immortal Stage level 9. Coupled with the dark flames, he was confident enough to fight the shadowy monster. Even if he couldn't take down the monster, he always had the option of using the system to teleport away. Sorry, host. The shadow monster has locked the space around, preventing the teleportation from being used. The system recommends the host man up and kills the monster. The system chuckled. The system expected Michael to fear the shadow monster and look for a way out of the battle. However, Michael had no signs of fear in his eyes whatsoever. He just cracked his neck and drew his dark swords. Noah? Rowena turned her cold gaze at Noah. There is no time to waste, Noah. Go away. I will take care of this, said Rowena, but Noah looked reluctant to listen to her. An ugly monstrosity like this can't take down your sister, Noah. Kill me. Michael rolled his eyes and cringed inside. He preferred the monster to attack them instead of listening to the two of them. Chapter 872. Powering up once again. Eventually, Rowena managed to convince Noah and send him away. Since Michael was the strongest and the most serious threat to its existence, it completely focused its rage on him. Despite the shadow monster's lack of facial features, Michael sensed deep hatred in its eyes. He thought it was because he had removed the curse from Ethan. However, the real reason was far from what he thought. This curse was just the simple version of the curse Andor created 5,000 years ago. He created the curse to affect the Dark Lord. When the battle between the Dark Lord and the mortal realm peaked, Andor unleashed the curse upon the Dark Lord. Only the curse didn't fall on the Dark Lord but on the Dark Queen. So even after the Dark Lord reset the universe, the curse still remembered its origin and why it was created. The curse was sentient after all. Black and red lightning bolts crackled around the dark swords in his hands. As the surroundings turned darker, Rowena felt the Dark Lord's power for the first time. Michael didn't hold back as he pushed his limit to the max. All the light around Rowena was sucked away by an invisible force as darkness completely enveloped them. She sensed the Dark Lord's power exponentially grow after the surroundings turned dark. The shadow monster halted its advancement when Michael's eyes turned completely black. Out of the blue, a shadowy spike shot out from the monster at lightning speed. Michael immediately raised his hand as the black shield appeared on his wrist and blocked the spike. Still, Michael was thrown backward for several meters before he came to a stop. The sheer force Michael felt cracked his ulna and radius. The APD immediately injected the healing potion into his bloodstream and started the healing process. In addition to the healing potion, Michael took the Berserker pills to enhance his physical prowess. When the shadow monster fired another shadow spike, Rowena retrieved her blades and tried to cut the spike into halves. However, she was too slow compared to the spike's speed. Even for Michael, the spike flew too quickly. He dashed away and still, the spike grazed him on the shoulder. Michael felt an intense pain in his shoulder. To his surprise, the dark flames appeared around his shoulder and burned the flesh in a blink of an eye. This was the first time Michael had seen the dark flames act without his command. Thanks to the APD, new flesh grew around his shoulder. Meanwhile, Rowena threw her blades at the shadow monster and shook the chains attached to them, creating a wave of shock blast. The shadow monster figure was slightly distorted by the shock wave, but she was too weak to cause any real damage. Jirarchchichach. The shadow monster roared, creating enough to blast Rowena away. Michael quickly dashed at Rowena and caught her mid-air by the chains of her blades. After Rowena safely landed on the ground, Michael threw one of the dark swords at the shadow monster. As the sword soared through the air, Michael raised his other dark sword, sending a bolt of lightning from the tip of the sword. The shadow monster dashed forward as the sword, and the lightning bolt went straight through its shadowy body. Michael immediately dashed out of the monster's path while shooting out dark beams from his eyes. Unfortunately, the dark beams went through the monster just like the sword and the lightning bolt. While Michael was running around the monster, shooting dark beams, Rowena leaped into the air and brought down her blades upon the monster. But the shadow monster created a hand out of the blue and slapped Rowena to the ground. Rowena coughed up blood. The ground around her had several cracks due to the sheer force of Rowena hitting the ground. Her silky smooth skin was riddled with bruises and scars as blood oozed out of the cut on his shoulder. The monster did not stop with a slap as it tried to stomp Rowena to death. Michael immediately raised his hand, sending a powerful blast of wind. The wind blasted through Rowena out of the monster's reach. Without lowering his hands, Michael summoned the dark sword he threw at the monster. The dark sword trembled on the ground for a moment before flying straight back into his hands. After the sword reached his hand, Michael dashed at the monster. His black eyes started to glow red as someone lit a fire in them. Michael decided to fight head-to-head with the monster as he was confident in evading the monster's attack. Although it had the advantage in size and cultivation power, the monster lacked agility like him. The badass point soared through the roof as Michael slashed the shadow monster left and right. He moved with enough speed to leave after images, and Rowena was stunned by how quick he was. As much as Michael liked to slice and dice the shadow monster, its shadowy figure made it impossible to harm it. No matter how many lightning bolts and dark beams he fired, none affected the monster. The more Michael fought, the more he realized he had no chance of winning unless he found a way to transform the shadowy figure into something tangible. Even the ring of fire created with dark flames had no effect. Finally, Rowena drank a full vial of healing potion and jumped back to her feet. She tried to dash at the monster, joining Michael in the fight. At that moment, the monster fired 5 spikes from its body at Michael. He quickly raised the black shield to block the spikes coming directly at him and dashed away to evade the rest. But one spike managed to impale him through the chest. The force sent Michael flying as the black shield fell off his hand. Rowena turned around and flew straight toward Michael without batting an eye. Ha 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 ha. The monster caught Rowena off guard with its sudden laughter. Instead of pressing its advantage, the monster ran around the blood spilled out of Michael's wound. The monster's devilish laughter echoed through the entire fire realm. Hearing the monster's laughter, more and more natives of the fire realm marched toward the area. Michael's blood, coupled with the shadow monster's laughter, drew the beasts of the fire realm to them. Ghost, Rowena saw Michael picking himself from the ground with the dark spike sticking out of his chest. Seeing the blood flowing out of his chest ached Rowena's heart. This strange pain increased as Michael burned down the spike with the dark flames coming out of his hand. What's it doing? Michael asked Rowena, who stared at him, burning his own flesh. Just looking at the skin melting down sent a chill running down her spine. He didn't even flinch as he continued to melt down the skin until she could see the rib cage. Stop it, Rowena couldn't bear to see him burn himself anymore. It's okay, Michael assured her. Then the skin slowly grew on his chest until the burn wound completely healed, leaving only a mark. We don't stand a chance as long as it remains ethereal, said Michael. Rowena turned around and stood by Michael's side. I might be able to help with that, said Rowena, clenching the blades. The next moment, Michael felt the sudden drop in the temperature around him. He looked down at the blades to see the silver blades slowly turning icy blue. The bone-chilling cold flames surrounded the blades, summoning intense frost upon them. Freezing it? Good idea. Michael gave a nod of appreciation. He flicked his blades and prepared to shut the monster's laughter. But when he was about to take a step forward, he saw several flocks of crows in the air and groups of glass wraiths on the ground. They were all on their way to the shadow monster. Rowena was stunned to see the beasts of Fire Realm, especially the glass wraiths. Although the glass wraiths were relatively weak monsters, killing them was not easy at all. One had to shatter its body until it had no soul energy left to revive itself. At that moment, hundreds of them flocked toward them with one intention: kill them. Contrary to her reaction, Michael had a smile on his face. You stupid dumb fuck, Michael cursed the monster. Not in anger but in excitement. In Rowena's eyes, they were beasts, while in Michael's eyes, they were bags of experience points. If he could kill them all, he would reach at least Immortal Stage level 8 without a doubt. At that time, the death range would boost his power to the half-celestial stage. In other words, the shadow monster just ran out of luck. Do you have a plan? Asked Rowena. Keep the shadow monster busy while I deal with these insects, Michael calmly said. Without wasting any time, Michael ascended into the air as Rowena prepared herself to fight the shadow monster with the cold flames. Once Michael was in the air, he cast the lightning dash and flew straight toward the flock of giant crows. Even from afar, Michael began to bombard the crows with lightning bolts. The crows flew down from the sky like flies as Michael began to hear the sweet sound of experience points increasing. Did you miss me? As Michael was wreaking havoc among the crows, Michael saw a volley of golden arrows striking down the crows. He turned around and saw Gaia in the air with her bow. What the hell is that? Gaia asked, pointing at the shadow monster on the ground. The monster tried to fly toward Michael, but Rowena sent a stream of cold flames, interrupting its movements. The cold flames froze the glass wraiths in the 5-meter radius and shattered them to pieces. As Rowena expected, the broken glass pieces merged together and returned to life. That's the curse, said Michael while shooting down the crows. This is not time for explanation. Kill as many beasts as you can, Michael ordered Gaia. With her by his side, he could earn double the experience. Finally, Michael received a golden opportunity to strengthen himself. If everything went according to his new plan, he would be at Immortal Stage Level 8 by the time this battle ends. Chapter 873. Temporarily reaching half Celestial Stage. In the previous chapter, I made a mistake by writing the Shadow Monster is at the Celestial Stage. It should have been half Celestial Stage. I edited the chapters and changed them to half Celestial Stage. Sorry for this grave mistake. Here is the Cultivation stages again. Do not worry about these instructions as I updated the chapter first and then wrote all this. So only the chapter word counts, not these comments. Arch sensing stage, foundation stage, body refining stage, body strengthening stage, core formation stage, core strengthening stage, soul refining stage, fusion stage, half immortal half celestial. While Michael and Gaia were striking down the crows in the sky, Rowena headed straight to the shadow monster. Seeing Rowena, a half-immortal, surviving a battle with a half-celestial being really surprised Gaia. Although the shadow monster was at the half-celestial stage, something felt off about the monster to Gaia. She felt it was not a true half-celestial. Otherwise Rowena would have been a red mush by now. There was no chance for a half-immortal even to survive a second in front of a half-celestial unless the celestial wasn't at its peak power. Since Gaia knew more about the celestials than Michael, she didn't think Rowena survived the monster because she was strong. On the contrary, Gaia thought the shadow monster was weak for a half-celestial. One reason why the shadow monster seemed weak in her eyes was the lack of physical body. A celestial being could not unleash their full power without a physical body. Celestials often existed in the ethereal form if something was to happen to their physical bodies. For instance, if another celestial being or an immortal managed to kill the celestial being somehow, their souls would escape the body and exist outside until it could find another vessel. While they were in the soul form, they would be at their weakest. Thus, Rowena was able to fight the shadow monster at the half-celestial stage. Many celestials would go to hell and heaven to create another physical body for themselves in case something was to happen to their current one. However, creating another physical body suitable for their soul was not as easy as one would expect. Plus, the shadow monster didn't have many offensive attacks to end the battle quickly. Ding! Congratulations to the host for killing a core formation level 4 crow. The reward is 100,000 experience points and 4,000 badass points. Ding! Congratulations to the host for successfully being a badass. The reward is 7,000 badass points. Ding! Congratulations to the host for killing a core formation level 7 crow. The reward is 100,000 experience points and 4,000 badass points. Ding! Congratulations to the host for successfully being a badass. The reward is 8,000 badass points. Ding! Congratulations to the host for killing a core strengthening stage level 5 crow. The reward is 200,000 experience points and 8,000 badass points. Ding! Congratulations to the host for successfully being a badass. The reward is 9,000 badass points. Michael willed the system to be quiet as the system blew his mind with notifications. The black bolts of lightning from Michael's dark swords riddled the skies and charcoaled countless crows. Despite the number of monsters around him, Michael restrained himself from using the ultimate ignitia. He wanted to use the ultimate spells on the shadow monster after Rowena froze it as planned. Speaking of the plan, Rowena was on the ground fighting the glass wraiths around the shadow monster. She had to fight off these beasts to reach the shadow monster, which remained on the ground, firing dark spikes at Michael. Several glass wraiths screamed and surrounded Rowena, only to get smashed by her. She threw the blades and swirled like a tornado, destroying every glass wraith around her. She destroyed them as soon as they revived themselves. After swinging the blades for a few moments, Rowena pulled the chains towards her, grabbed the blades by their hands, and stabbed the ground with enough force to create a powerful shock wave. The shock wave mixed with the cold flames sent a chilling frost wave that froze everything around Rowena. Then with another stab to the ground, Rowena sent another shock wave, shattering everything frozen. When Rowena cleared out the 20 or so glass wraiths with a single attack, the shadow monster finally turned its focus on Rowena. Seeing the glowing eyes fall on her, Rowena prepared herself to attack the monster head-on. However, when she took a step forward, the shadow monster roared. The next moment, Rowena went flying away from the monster like a rag doll. She coughed up mouth full of blood in midair as every organ in her body screamed in excruciating pain. Michael and Gaia were occupied with the monsters as they failed to catch Rowena. A few moments later, Rowena hit the ground and went sliding through the ground. Her sky-blue robes were torn and had holes in several places. When she picked herself from the ground, her hand looked crooked. The bone in her hand was sticking out through her skin. Just the look of this bloody sight would make a typical man squirm. But Rowena grabbed her broken bone and pushed it inside, gritting her teeth to fight the pain. The shadow monster didn't plan to give Rowena any time to retaliate. Instead, it flew straight toward Rowena, its eyes burning with pure killing intent. Congratulations to host Michael for leveling up. The current stage is Immortal Stage Level 6. Just as the monster was moving toward Rowena, Michael leveled up. As a result, his full power reached the Immortal Stage Level 10 due to the death range. Even though it's just one level, it boosted his power to the point he appeared before Rowena in a blink of an eye. The shadow monster created a giant fist out of thin air, bringing it down upon Rowena. Luckily for her, Michael was just in time to block the fist with his black shield. Boom. Upon the fist hitting the black shield, a thunderous explosion sounded throughout the area. The ground beneath Michael's feet cracked as the punch pushed Michael down. Michael gritted his teeth, struggling to keep the shield between himself and the monster. At that moment, the black shield was the only thing that safeguarded Rowena from getting crushed to death. Now! Michael shouted at Rowena. She didn't need Michael to tell her twice as she summoned the cold flames to freeze the shadow monster. Meanwhile, Gaia fired arrow after arrow quickly enough to mimic firing several arrows simultaneously. She flew around the shadow monster and kept the other monsters of the fire realm at bay. The moment Rowena summoned the cold flames, Michael felt an intense chill as he saw the icy blue flames dancing upon Rowena's hand. Ignoring the pain in her born hand, Rowena raised her other hand, firing a stream of cold flames at the shadow monster. As soon as the stream of cold flames hit the monster, it roared and exerted more force to bury Michael in the ground. Michael's knees were on the verge of shattering, but he remained firm, resisting the shadow monster's force with brute strength. Thanks to Gaia striking down more and more beasts, Michael grew stronger. Rowena sensed the aura around Michael getting stronger with each falling beast, yet she was too focused on freezing the monster instead of focusing on Michael. Rowena's cold flames momentarily stopped the monster from making another move. Michael utilized the opportunity by casting the Ring of Fire. Immediately Rowena felt the temperature taking a turn as she felt the intense heat all around her. The cloud of darkness shrouding him grew darker and stronger as the dark flames burnt everything to the ground. Even the glass wraiths could not revive themselves as the flames evaporated their body and soul. Congratulations to host Michael for leveling up. The current stage is Immortal Stage Level 7. The moment Michael stepped into Level 7 of the Immortal Stage, the death range boosted his power 4 levels higher and made him a half-celestial. His strength skyrocketed through the roof as Rowena felt the sudden explosion in his aura. With his new power, Michael slowly pushed the shadow monster's hand away and punched the frozen area in the monster's core. Michael's punch sent the monster flying. It couldn't stop for a mile. Sensing the power radiation from him, the glass wraiths and the crows halted their advancement. Their eyes glistened with fear. When Michael took a step forward, they all stepped backward. Rowena was startled by how powerful he looked at that moment. One moment he struggled with the monster, and the next he sent it flying with a single punch. Suddenly, countless clusters of dark clouds appeared in the sky out of nowhere. They rumbled as purple lightning streaks struck across the sky. Rowena looked up at the dark clouds and sensed the overwhelming murderous aura from the Dark Lord. He slowly raised his arms to the sky and brought them down as hundreds of lightning bolts struck the ground at the same time. The sight immediately reminded Rowena of the time he ended the lives of hundreds of soldiers in Ithilien almost a year ago. Her neck hair stood up due to the electricity in the air. The lightning bolts crackled everywhere she looked, burning the beasts to a crisp. Congratulations to host Michael for leveling up. The current stage is Immortal Stage Level 8. Congratulations to host Michael for leveling up. The current stage is Immortal Stage Level 9. Ding. Congratulations to the host for successfully being a badass. The reward is 15,000 badass points. Ding. Congratulations to the host for successfully being a badass. The reward is 25,000 badass points. Ding. Congratulations to the host for successfully being a badass. The reward is 12,000 badass points. The amount of experience points Michael got exceeded his expectations. Furthermore, he only needed 50,000 badass points to pay his debt to the system. Initially, he thought killing all the beasts would get him to Immortal Stage level 8, but he killed enough with his ultimate Ignitia to reach level 9. He decimated all the glass wraiths and flocks of crows in a 1-mile radius. Rowena had never underestimated him. However, at that moment she realized how powerful he truly was. When the darkness around him and the dark clouds in the sky faded away, Rowena saw the piles of ashes around her. No wonder the whole world feared him, she thought. After Michael eradicated the beasts, the shadow monster turned out to be alone. I will distract it and you freeze it with the cold flames, said Michael calmly as though nothing had happened. Now that he reached level 9, he could reach the half-celestial stage with the use of the death range. In other words, he closed the power gap between him and the shadow monster. You're tuning in to the Han Lee's Wuxia Adventures YouTube channel. We're so grateful for your support, and don't forget to subscribe to join us on this incredible journey through captivating stories. Your generosity through donations truly makes a world of difference, as it's the primary source of revenue that allows me to expand and enhance this channel for you. Thank you from the bottom of my heart for being a part of this adventure.